All right, guys. So, whoopsie. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to What's the Obsession. I just have this in my hair because it was a pen. It was sitting right there. And that's what I did. Whoops. Print. I don't have anything to print. Okay. So welcome, everybody. I'm so glad that you can make it this evening. So tonight we are talking about the Idaho 4 case, and we are going to be looking at some matters of evidence of fact and fiction, which is something that we often look at on this channel, and trying to determine exactly what is the evidence that we know about so far that the prosecution has towards Bryan Kohberger's conviction in trial. Is it more than we believe we know? Is it less than we believe we know? Like, what exactly is going on with that? So I'm just going to play you just a tiny little bit of a couple pre-recorded videos that I have ready for you, just to keep things flowing. And welcome to everybody that's here. And yes, Midge Elkins is a new moderator. And thank you so very much, Midge. I'm really appreciative. And let's see. Let me just check something here. I just want to make sure we have enough mods here. And hey, Rosie, would you like to be a moderator for tonight? I'm going to add you. If you don't want to, then just tell me you don't want to, and I'll take you off. Just anything that's like a little crazy, people that are being mean, nasty, disrespectful, because I trust you, Rosie. All right. So I know it's a Sunday evening. A lot of people have the day off tomorrow, and people might be out doing things. Hi from Boise. Welcome, 3 forest animals. Oh, great. Awesome. Welcome. So great to see all of you. All right. So let me go ahead and bring this into the stream. Hey, guys. And also, my gosh, it's Father's Day. So to all you fathers out there, thank you for everything you do, and happy Father's Day. And to all of you that love your father, that miss your father, that spent time with your father today, I hope you all had a wonderful day as well. Okay. So let's see. Stop screen and present. All right. So this is just a little bit of a video of the evidence that led to Bryan Kohberger's arrest. Bryan Kohberger on December 30th, 2022. People interested in the case and true crime sleuths alike have been scrambling around for information about the person himself. Those who have known Bryan Kohberger throughout the years have made statements and have given reports to news outlets, media sources, and have just posted on their own personal social media pages. It seems at this time we've learned just about all we can about Bryan Kohberger without learning any more from the people who conducted the investigations themselves. Many true crime sleuths and the public in general are waiting for the release of the PCA, or probable cause affidavit. But how likely is it that we will be privy to all of the information contained within the probable cause affidavit shortly after Bryan Kohberger is extradited to Idaho? Questions the public would like to know the answer to include whether the suspect knew the victims and to what his alleged motive might have been and what finally prompted his arrest. The killings shook the college town of Moscow, Idaho, which hadn't seen a murder in 7 years, as some in the community grew frustrated with limited information authorities shared as their investigation developed. That was partly due to state law, which limits what information authorities can release before the suspect makes an initial appearance in court. In this case, of course, it would be in Idaho. The document containing much of the information the public wants to know can be found in the all-important probable cause affidavit, or PCA, the legal document used to justify Kohberger's arrest and to obtain a warrant. The document will remain sealed until he returns to Idaho, where he faces 4 counts of first-degree murder as well as a felony burglary charge per Lata County, Idaho prosecutors. A legal analyst and defense attorney, Joey Jackson, told CNN that document will tell us an awful lot. It will speak to the issue of probable cause, why he is under arrest, what is the justification for holding him and for going after him from a prosecution perspective. So we know that the PCA, or probable cause affidavit, will remain sealed at least until Kohberger's hearing in Idaho. And the question has been widely posed, is it possible that the document will remain sealed beyond his initial Idaho hearing, as it was in the Delphi case, as it pertained to suspect Richard Allen's arrest? This is a somewhat layered legal question, so I consulted an attorney, Leonard Smith, former district attorney in the state of New York, to help bring some clarity to the issue. He confirmed that the question regarding whether or not the PCA will potentially remain sealed beyond the initial Idaho hearing is largely a matter that is at the state's discretion. He explains that a judge has a discretion to keep the probable cause affidavit sealed or release the probable cause affidavit and redact it or release it in its entirety. Now, a difference between Idaho law and Indiana law, where the Delphi case happened procedurally, is that Idaho is an open record state. That is why several YouTube channels have been able to ask for under FOIA Act requests and receive body cam footage from police officers having anything to do with the suspect or with the property at which the 4 victims resided. Since Idaho is an open records state, it is more unlikely that the PCA will remain sealed, as it was for a short period of time after the initial hearing of Richard Allen in Indiana. It would have to entail that the probable cause affidavit also named another suspect aside from Bryan Kohberger for it to be legally sealed as a continuance by a judge. We do know that Chief James Fry has said since the arrest of Bryan Kohberger that it is likely that Kohberger acted alone, which leads us to believe and make a reasonable conclusion that the probable cause affidavit does not name any other parties in addition to Bryan Kohberger. It is likely that the probable cause affidavit will be unsealed and will be available to us as a matter of public open record. What is this document going to tell us? It might tell us the suspect's alleged motive. It might give us information as to whether or not he knew the victims prior to committing this crime. It might contain information that gives us an indication if he actually targeted anybody living in the home at 1122 King Road, or if this was more just a random act. It could give us information regarding the weapon used, if the weapon had been found, if they learned any more information about the means, method, or mode of the crime that he committed. It will give us information for sure as to what indicated Bryan Kohberger was the suspect and what led authorities to go to a judge requesting a warrant for his arrest, where the judge clearly granted that warrant that eventually led to Bryan Kohberger's arrest. So all of us who have been following the case are eagerly awaiting the unsealing of the probable cause affidavit. We must always keep in mind the one thing that is of the greatest importance in discussing this case at all is that we find justice for Maddie, Kelly, Ethan, and Xana, and peace for their families. Okay, so we won't play that again. We saw that in the intro. So that video was, it was created a little while ago. So when we're talking about things being unsealed in the probable cause affidavit, of course, a lot of that has already happened. But the question I think that we are asking now, as a true crime community is, what exactly is the evidence and what is not the evidence? I think that there is a big matter of fact versus fiction when we ask that question, because there has been, a void of information because there is a very strict and broad gag order. So those people who are closest to the case are not able to give any information regarding the case. I mean, even, the typical leaks that we have oftentimes in cases, if you are somebody who is connected to the courts, there's going to be sanctions. And if you are somebody who is practicing law or is in law enforcement, you do not want those court sanctions imposed on yourself, because that is going to be professional mayhem and hell for you, right? So let's see, let me just get something a little more. Hello, everybody that's here and everybody who is watching the replay. Also, welcome everybody. So happy that you're here. Let me see if this one's done cooking. Oh, it is. How awesome. Okay, so this is a little more current. Now, I just uploaded a video, I don't know, about an hour ago, and it has to do with this issue of fact versus fiction. And it is an issue that I had talked about before, but rather than telling you something that I'm about to tell you through what you're going to watch in this little pre-recorded video, I'm just going to let the message come through once. Hey, Edward, how's it going? Edward, somebody had suggested recently that you should be a moderator. Would you have an interest in moderating tonight? I'm afraid I don't have enough moderators in chat, and I just get concerned about that because people can get crazy. So I'm going to add you. And if you're like, no, hell no, just let me know and I'll take you off, okay? There you go. Very good. Okay. Thank you, Edward. You're the best. Hey, honey bun, how are you doing? Always great to see you. All right. So present, share screen. Happy Father's Day. If you weren't here when I wished y'all, happy Father's Day for those of you who are fathers, who love your father, who spend time with your father, who miss your father. Everybody celebrate those that you love today. All right. There we go. Time to watch this video, please click like and subscribe and hit the bell for future notifications.
Yeah, so what was it like covering this case with all these random people claiming that they had uncovered something about it?
I've always wondered, what exactly is it about a person that makes a person? I know what I was going to say. The beginning 2 minutes of this video are the same as the video I just uploaded, but then they go different ways. So if you're like, I saw this already, you did 2 minutes of it, then considered random.
Yeah, Diane, that created a real challenge, right? But the issue is that because authorities weren't saying a lot, there was this information vacuum, and it had to be filled, and it ended up being filled with these internet online sleuths with these wild accusations, and it became noise for me.
Some journalists in mainstream media have taken a holier-than-thou stance on the Idaho 4 investigation, or I should say the investigation into the murders of Kelly Gonzalez, Madison Mogen, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle, pointing to those of us who talk about this case on YouTube as being people who are just creating noise and have nothing but baseless speculations. Although some people do seem to have a lot of baseless speculations, are the claims of some people in mainstream media that these so-called online sleuths are just creating a lot of noise, are those claims accurate?
You know, Diane, we deal in facts here at ABC, and we're proud of that. And so you just have to ignore that noise. But I think what Maria pointed out so poignantly there is that these accusations that go into the internet, that go into the world, are not without real consequence. And when there's all these tips pouring in and authorities have to create a separate FBI call line just to sift through these, it takes a lot of time away from that investigation.
Those of us following a case under a strict and broad gag order are receiving very little in the way of actual evidence that will be presented at trial to prove the guilt of Bryan Kohberger. Since people close to the case are under a strict and broad gag order, a question that I've asked is how much do those in the mainstream media really know that the so-called YouTube sleuths do not know, if anything? What we have heard from mainstream media are a lot of statements like a source close to the victims' families or a source close to the case, with no indication then from mainstream media who that source is precisely, not even a hint, no details whatsoever.
A source close to the victims' families has told me that Bethany never, ever emerged from the basement room. Like, she never came upstairs. She left the home and was outside in the chaos in the front of the house, but never did go to that second floor, never did see the carnage. She wasn't part of the discovery of the bodies. She was the only one living in the basement at that point. Dylan, the other surviving roommate, you well know now, was on the second floor, had the room across from the kitchen, opened the door, peeked out and saw who she says looked like Bryan Kohberger with the bushy eyebrows, saw that male all clad in black with a black mask walking out.
Then there was this detail that was reported by Ashley Banfield, and on this airing, she brought in Brian Enton and spoke with him, and the caption just said, sources told, these details. Well, according to the sources that I've been talking to for the past 6 months, who are friends of Ethan Chapin, they're Sigma Chi fraternity brothers, only part of this reporting was correct, and there is an erroneous and superfluous detail in there that sensationalizes the story that is not true, and that is that Ethan's best friend Hunter, who arrived on the scene early and was part of the 911 call being made, let's just say that, took Ethan's pulse. Well, according to my sources, who I firmly believe that was not the case.
But what we haven't known is what happened prior to the first responders arriving on the scene. And tonight I can tell you, you have heard that the 911 call was made from a surviving roommate's cell phone. But we can now tell you who it was who made that call. I'm not going to name the person, but it was Ethan's best friend who made the 911 call. And that's because it was Ethan's best friend who made the discovery of Xana and Ethan's bodies. And that is a very tragic and sad detail to report. Up until now, it had been an assumption that there was maybe an unconscious person because it was a guess that there was someone behind the door who wasn't answering a bedroom door. Now we can tell you that it was Ethan's best friend who had been called over that morning and made the discovery and took Ethan's pulse.
Video about this issue before, and I didn't go into all of the details that I discussed with the two University of Idaho fraternity students because I just didn't feel comfortable with it at the time. However, I did just put out a video that disclosed some additional details, so you can go and check that out. It was uploaded just this evening, which is June 18th, 2023. Since the world got news of this tragedy that occurred in Moscow, Idaho, Online sleuths and mainstream media alike have been grasping at straws and doing anything they can to get a glimpse inside the investigation to have an understanding of exactly what evidence does exist.
So we turn to our Amanda Rowley, who has been at the crime scene all day today. She shared with us earlier that there has been a lot of activity there today. So Amanda, what have you seen today?
Well, at this hour, the crime scene remains very active. This is the most active I've seen in the last few days. Right behind me, we have the Idaho State Police forensics team inside the house. And just within the last hour, I'm not sure if you can see from this angle, but we do want to give some privacy. One of the top floor windows, the blinds have now been open. We can see from a different angle some of the forensics team coming in and out, some wearing plastic white suits, taking photos. Earlier in the day, I did see some flashes, what appeared to come from a camera from inside the home. They're spending all day here collecting evidence and reassessing the home here. Now, earlier today, this afternoon, I did notice the back sliding door to the house was opened at one point today. Now, we could see red markings stuck to the frame of the door. Idaho State Police spokesperson Aaron Snell told me this afternoon it was believed that the potential suspect came through the sliding glass door. But again, there appeared to be no signs of forced entry. Now, he says, again, that forensic team is reassessing the house, looking for any potential additional evidence. In the meantime, he gave me an update on efforts to recreate a timeline of events and how the public will be a huge help in this investigation.
Could this be the killer's handprint? The ghostly image appeared when this window was dusted for prints.
There's no doubt that it's an important item of evidence. There has to be a point of entry and a point of exit in a crime like this. If there is a handprint, it may be very significant.
I can show you. And we're learning that 21-year-old Kaylee Gonsalves may have been the killer's prime target. Published reports say that Kaylee was subjected to a more brutal attack than the other three victims. She was killed on the same bed along with her best friend, Madison Mogan. News Nation reporter Brian Enton is in Idaho covering the investigation.
There's a number of different theories possible. Since her wounds were more significant than Maddie's, is it possible she was the target? Yes. Or is it possible that she woke up and was trying to fight back and that Maddie was the target?
As the investigation enters its fourth week, Kaylee's father is expressing disappointment with the local police.
Do you feel confident in the police investigation and the people investigating right now?
I do not feel confident, and that's why I push the envelope and say a little bit more. I hate to be that guy, but there's a job to do for everybody. Has a job and a role to play, and this is my role as the parent.
He says he's raising money to hire a private detective. The two surviving roommates who slept through the attack are breaking their silence. Poignant letters from Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk were read aloud by a pastor at a memorial service in an Idaho church. Dylan wrote,
I know it will be hard to not have the four of them in our lives, but I know Xana, Ethan, Maddie, and Kaylee would want us to live life and be happy.
Okay, so, the way I see it, I've been looking through a lot of this information, really all day long as I was just getting prepared for this live stream. And I have a couple of videos about this case in production. I started to make some videos again on this case that aren't just focused on what the Sigma Chi guys have to say, just because I have a perspective too that I do want to share. So the way I see it, and I'm sure this is the way that many of you see it, this certainly is not rocket science, is that kind of the two categories of evidence I think that are going to be most relevant in this case, that are going to sink or swim Bryan Kohberger, is of course going to be DNA evidence. And I think it's also going to come down to his social media searches and possibly also, the cell phone pings. As I have said before, I think there's a lot more to those cell phone pings. I'm giving them a lot more credit than a lot of people are. I think we're going to be able to determine that Bryan Kohberger was using two primary kind of mobile devices. And that's why we see some weird things with the cell phone pings when we just look at the probable cause affidavit or the evidence that we are privy to so far. So I was going to read this article to you having to do with possible DNA evidence, but I see there's a video connected. So I'm going to see if I can, what the video is sounding like, just to kind of save my voice. If not, I'll just read it to you as I was planning. Nope. Good things turned up.
Kohberger. He's the Pennsylvania man charged with killing 4 students at the University of Idaho last year. Action News reporter Jillian Mealy joining us now live in studio with details on what these documents revealed, especially about what police are looking for.
That's right. And there was a lot of new information that came down first thing this morning when the search warrants were unsealed for both Bryan Kohberger's white Hyundai Elantra and his parents' Pennsylvania home.
The items seized in the search warrant are clearly an attempt to put him at the scene of the crime.
A knife, a Glock 22 40 caliber handgun with 3 empty magazines, a pocket knife, black face masks and gloves, numerous articles of dark clothing, and criminology books are among a laundry list of items detectives seized from Bryan Kohberger.
Now, I just want to stop that right there. I'm interested to know, of this list of items seized from Kohberger's home, I mean, I don't even know if we could call them necessarily evidence or not. As they are analyzed, as they are evaluated, that's when we're going to know if they qualify as being evidence or not. But we have a knife, a Glock 22 40 caliber handgun, 3 empty magazines, a pocket knife, black mask and gloves, dark clothing, and criminology books. Just if you mind like putting something in chat, did all of you know that all those items were found? And be honest, when I was going through the list of items that were found today, I totally forgot about the Glock 22 and the empty magazines. I'd certainly read that information a few times at some point, but just because we haven't been focused on it, it just kind of escaped me. 2 words, 2 cents, reasonable doubt. Absolutely. Jeff H. also made a really good comment here saying, we watch, let's see, I got to make this bigger to read it. We watch various cameras in a Macy's parade and can follow the path of a float. Same with the path of a white Elantra around 4 a.m. That's a really interesting point. I really like how you made an analogy so people can think about, oh yeah, like I do that, right? That's a good comment. I like that. Very true. McJay says, nothing in the legal documentation has me convinced he is guilty. It feels very much like a case that the state wants to go away. And then 2 cents has 3 more words, just speaking in chunks. That's good. I like that 2 cents. Welcome. 3 words, terrible police investigation. I'm like back and forth on that. I'll just give you my opinion since I'm the one talking here. I don't think it was like terrible police investigation. I just think that, I go back and forth because here's like someone in my head talking, going, the Moscow PD were just way in over their head. Never have they had to investigate anything of this caliber. But then I say, well, there were 26 FBI agents on the case day 1, and the FBI agents only populated from there. So, yeah, I mean, I think that you can make a point going either way. No calls to 911 until the 8 hours after. That is always like the biggest question in my mind. Randy Hansen, I know, is always making that buddy connection, and it is very strange. And I always think of the point that you made a long time ago, Randy. Randy said something to the effect of, correct me if I'm wrong, Randy, is it worse to think that there's somebody out there who committed these 4 homicides of Kelly Gonsalves, Maddie Mogan, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle? Trying to stay away from calling the Idaho 4 because I do not want to desensitize us or depersonalize them. In case you're wondering why I keep saying their names, that's why. Is it worse to know that somebody committed those murders and there was somebody out there that did that to poor little puppy buddy, or that the same person was grotesque enough to commit both of those murders? I mean, that question, it doesn't have an answer as far as I'm concerned. I mean, the more I think about it, the more I don't want to think about it. Lack of evidence doesn't prove otherwise. Yeah. Not sure exactly. Can you clarify this? DC Primetime says police and welcome, sweetheart. Police investigation is kind of brilliant statistically. Look at Delphi, took 5 years. Okay, I see. As compared to Delphi, which took 5 years, when Richard Allen lived adjacent backyard wise to one of the victims. That was crazy. I mean, it was a town of less than 3,000 people. They had such a small pool of suspects. They narrowed it down, knowing that he was local, gave him a very specific and narrow profile, which narrowed it down to about 198 people, according to my math. And it still took him 5 years to find him. That was wild. I still don't understand why that is. Is that true? Buddy's home, Randy? And I didn't know that. Dang, wow. Lori Corincha. Just a really quick question, kind of, this is off the topic. Corey Richins, are you guys following that case? Because I've been following it and I've done a couple videos on it I put out. I was thinking about making more material. Are you guys watching it? Is that something you want to see material on? Because if you don't, I'm not going to bother. But if you do, I will totally make it. Okay. All right. Let me finish playing this little video here. Turn it up again.
Criminology books are among a laundry list of items detectives seized from Bryan Kohberger's parents' Pocono area home.
So they're going to look at the knife to see is there any DNA on it, even if a knife has been rinsed or washed. If you have a knife with a wooden handle, there could be trace DNA.
28-year-old Bryan Kohberger, a former criminology PhD student at Washington State University, was arrested on December 30th and charged with stabbing the 4 University of Idaho students to death in their off-campus house. J.J. Claver, retired supervisor and special agent with the FBI, says some of the items collected from the search can be used to see if they are tied to other crimes.
That gun is going to go to a lab and will be test fired, and they will look at that gun and see was.
Okay, this is one reason I like this article. For example, among the evidence that we don't know anything about, when they did execute that search warrant on Bryan Kohberger's apartment, one of the things that they found was a Glock 22 40 caliber and 3 empty magazines. So as the expert here just says, they're going to test fire that gun. They're going to, compare the evidence to see if that gun was used in the commission of any other crimes. This is an example of the things that are going on behind the scenes right now that we, the public, have absolutely no clue about because of the strict and broad gag order.
Items from Kohberger's white Hyundai Elantra, including gloves, goggles, boots, and a shovel, among other things.
Now, this, I think, is where we're going to get really relevant because I know that I've heard many of you say this, and I certainly think so myself, and the experts that I have spoken with personally about this, whether I've reported on it or not, many of them have all come really honed in on the same point. It could possibly very well hinge on whether there is corroborating, connecting evidence found in his vehicle or not. If there is, it's like game over. If there's not, state might have a problem, right?
Also seized numerous parts of the vehicle itself, including the door panel, seats and seat cushions, and the brake and gas pedals.
Anytime a person goes from point A to point B to point C, they are transferring pieces or evidence from each of those points to the next place.
Yeah, this investigation has been very detailed and very thorough. Kohberger's preliminary hearing is scheduled for late June. Brian.
Okay, Jillian, thank you.
All right, so there's that. So
4 documents were unsealed today related to the arrest.
We know that. All right, just give me 1 second. I just got to click around a little bit. And you know what? If anybody else is, dying to come up here and say anything, I will put the link to the panel here in chat. You're more than welcome to do so. I don't think I'm going to be on super long this evening because I've got a lot of videos to make and things to do. I've got a lot of things in the works, and I've been trying to make my live stream shorter so those of you that watch on replay aren't tortured, right? All right, so now let me just hit the back here. And all right, so that's dealing with, the DNA and some other aspects of the evidence. So as I was saying, I think like the 2 main categories, of course, it's almost a no-brainer, are going to come down to the DNA and also social media activity. Now, in regards to social media activity, let me see if this one has a video connected or if it's just apparently. All right, let me get through that ad there. Let me share and we'll listen to what they have to say. And again, if it's not a great video, I'll just read it as I was planning to do initially. Okay, let's see if we can get around all these ads. My word, holy cow. Whoa, what is that? All right, there it is. Okay.
Look at this tragic of 4 Idaho college students. New police body camera video coming to light. ABC's Faith Abube is here with the details. Faith, good morning to you.
And good morning to you, Janae. These new videos and accompanying court documents are giving us a closer
Really what
look
it's
at
going
this
for.
tragic quadruple murder investigation. Now, you'll remember 28-year-old Bryan Kohberger was arrested at the end of last year, accused of killing University of Idaho students Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Mogen, Zaina Kernoodle, and Ethan Chapin in November. One of the newly released police videos captured a month before the killings show Kohberger talking his way out of a traffic ticket. Now, this is significant because the traffic stop after Kohberger allegedly ran a red light happens not too far from the University of Idaho. And Kohberger is driving the same white vehicle that police believe he used on the night of the murders. The officer eventually lets him go, but fast forward to December, and the second police body cam footage shows officers searching the apartment of Kohberger. Now, this was the day after he was arrested for those murders. The video is heavily redacted, but court documents reveal between Kohberger's apartment and storage unit, officers say they recovered several pieces of evidence. Investigators say early tests of some of those items suggest that they do have traces of blood. The recovered items included a mattress cover and pillow with stains, a black rubber glove, and hair strands. Now, Kohberger's legal team insists that their client is innocent, but Gio, the suspect, has yet to enter a plea in court.
All right, we will be watching that. Faith, thank you so much for that.
Okay, that really wasn't what I was going for. All right, so let me just read.
Sadie. She's on
No,
Verizon.
we don't need to watch your ad. We don't like your video. I'm not going to watch your ad. All right. Okay. Go away, video. Ooh, this is like a funky site, but it's okay. Damn, all these ads. What the hey? Are you guys still seeing this here? Probably doesn't really matter, but all right. Investigators are probing the digital footprint of Bryan Kohberger, the suspect accused of killing the 4 Idaho college students in an early morning attack last year, according to the new court documents. And this is from June 2nd, by the way. Documents include search warrant applications for some of Kohberger's internet activity and some additional phone records, as well as some of the 4 victims' social media accounts. There is probable cause to believe that those records could yield evidence regarding the November killings of Kaylee Gonzalez, Zaina Kernoodle, Ethan Chapin, and Madison Mogen at the girls' off-campus home in Moscow, Idaho, the document says. Whoops. Let's see. The documents, okay. Though they did not reveal details of what the warrants obtained, the records indicate that prosecutors have launched an expansive examination of Kohberger's activities online as they probe the suspect's possible connection to the victims and the crimes he is accused of committing. The case has only just begun once you make an arrest, says Robert Boyce, an ABC News contributor and retired chief of detectives in the New York Police Department. You want to see what he was looking up. You want to know what he was saying, whether under his or under an assumed name on these platforms. They want to establish his state of mind, who he talks to, and what he talks about, Boyce says. And this is all behavioral forensic stuff. There could be probative materials there. The Leta, thank you for all those who let me know I mispronounced it, and I'm being serious. I do appreciate it. County Prosecutor's Office leading the case against Kohberger did not reply to requests from ABC News for comment. Kohberger, age 28, was indicted last month on charges including 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary. At his arraignment last week, which now is a few weeks ago, Kohberger declined to offer a plea. He stood silent, so the judge entered a plea of not guilty. This is probably all stuff that we know. More stuff we know. I don't want to read you stuff you already know. The murder weapon has not been recovered, authorities have said. Where do you think that murder weapon is, people? Somewhere along the route from Washington State to Colorado when they took that grand detour, perhaps? What do you guys think? Among the new documents are search warrant applications for Kohberger's accounts on Reddit, Google, TikTok, as well as the 4 victims' Snapchat accounts and additional records from AT&T, which just brushes upon the reason why I think there were 2 primary mobile devices that he was using. Investigators obtained information from the suspects. I just read them, sorry. Investigators had also previously obtained records from Kaylee Gonzalez's Reddit account, earlier court findings show. In the affidavit for Kohberger's arrest, officials note he had previously posted a Reddit survey, and this is one thing we do know is real, asking participants to provide information to understand how emotions and psychological traits influence decision-making when committing a crime, which is so super eerie. From Kohberger's Google account, investigators, according to the new filings, have also pulled extensive record emails, including drafts and trash, hangouts and chats, including photos, his Google Drive, including documents, spreadsheets, presentations, and files, and associated metadata. A lot of freaking information, hence 51 terabytes, right? The warrant also obtained information about his search and browsing history, calendar events, and contacts. Google Play purchases, along with his Google Play transactions, court documents show. You want to develop a profile of him in your case, sometimes a psychological profile, always a psychological profile, I'm going to say, boys. That's a silly thing to say. Always a psychological profile. That's what you start out with. They want to put a knife in that sheath because they don't have it right now. So you want to see if he bought it somewhere online. And, we have gained information, mostly, I think it was from Dateline, that talks about that he purchased the knife from Amazon well before he went out to Washington. As far as I know, that is sourced from Dateline. So I'm not trusting 100% things that are coming from Dateline, but we shall see. If I'm wrong, let me know. I'll correct myself. This is such a stupid thing to say. I'm sorry. This guy, boys, the more evidence you can put before a judge, the better you've got. No kidding. I mean, sometimes these experts, the things they say. Investigators also obtained additional AT&T records for a subscriber, unknown at this time, for the specific time period of June 3rd, 2022 to August 1st, 2021. And I think that's definitely a burner phone, including any messages, records, files, logs, or information that have been deleted but are still available, which is most of them, if it's AT&T, all of them, if it is Verizon, including cell tower pings that transmitted outgoing and incoming calls. Investigators previously used cell tower data to link Kohberger to the killings. Crime scene court documents show. We know that. Records from Strava, an internet service which allows users to track their physical exercise and share their performance on social networks, were also obtained. And we talked about this in a previous live stream. He took a run that ended right at the police station, which was really weird. Do you guys know about that? Do you want more information about that? Let me know in chat, including biometric information like exercise data, session logs, geolocation, contacts, and photos. Names and accounts obtained were redacted, but the search warrant application says there is information related to the investigation into the student's killing. Well, there better be if they're diving into his civil liberties like that. Records related to the 4 victims' Snapchat accounts were also obtained according to the documents, including communications or other messages sent or received by the accounts, logs of previous snaps, stories, and chats, and all records pertaining to communications between Snapchat and any person regarding the user or users' Snapchat accounts, including contacts with support services and all records of action taken, including suspensions of the accounts. So this is something a little bit important here, as we had been talking about, this kind of like timeline of the morning after this tragedy took place before the 911 call was made. And certain folks were claiming that students had known really early on, like hours and hours before the 911 call was made. The question came up several times, and I didn't always have a chance to respond to it because I researched it thoroughly. Can you retrieve record of snaps? Absolutely, positively. Like anything else, they leave a digital footprint. I see you, Riddler. I'm going to grab you as soon as I'm done with this article. There's also a lot to this case, technology-wise. It's an evolving and changing field, but it's the best evidence you have because it's irrefutable, unbiased, and human error-free. Boyce said he's a real freaking genius. It may not be one knockout punch, but there could be overwhelming circumstantial evidence. Brilliant. So then what I wanted to show you here was Let me bring Riddler up as well. See, stop screen. Hello, everyone. Welcome, y'all. If I haven't said welcome to you yet. Okay. Let me bring Riddler up here. Hey, Riddler, how's it going?
Oh, happy Father's Day.
Happy
Thank you
Father's
for
Day to you. How's it
thank you
going?
for
Great to
having me
see you.
up here.
Thanks for coming up.
Well,
Absolutely.
we're finally finished, well, hopefully, with all these thunderstorms we've been getting in the southeast.
Oh
It's been
yeah, you
rough.
probably needed it though to cool things off and get some pre-summer hydration, right?
Exactly, but the humidity will bounce right up on you. It'll drain
Yeah.
you. And I know there's some other channels out there, they're not able to go live because they've lost power in their
Oh,
homes. Some of the other ones I talked with around here. But I
huh.
was going to ask you about the did Amazon receive a warrant or saying, has BK ever, we want to see everything BK has ordered from you guys?
Yeah, I'm sure that they received documentation compelling them to release the documents of anything that they have on record for Bryan Kohberger. Well, okay, let me say this. If it is true that what Dateline reported, and is that the source you heard all this Amazon mumbo jumbo from, was Dateline, right, about the knife?
Well, somebody showed on the screen, and there's been some fake things on the screens. Caution you on that.
That's right.
But I saw something on there where law enforcement asked Amazon
Mm-hmm.
for his ordering, his purchases.
Let's see. Hey, Suspicious, how are you doing? Well, here's what I do know, because I am also very aware of all of the fake things on the screen that you're talking about. So, and honestly, there's so much information. Let me just tell you, I'm going to scroll through right here. It can be difficult to keep straight, even if you're somebody who is, charging yourself with keeping this stuff straight because you have a YouTube channel that's talking about the case like myself. It can be a little confusing. So starting back in, 1229, we have the affidavit, the probable cause order, and all the things that are leading up to the arrest, and that happened right after the arrest. Now, as we start to get down into the evidence, oops, am I sharing this with you? Yes, I am. Oh, let me make it a little bit bigger. Hey, did I say hey, sis? I think I already said hey to my sis. All right, I'm just going to take us down off the screen really quick because I just want to make that big for everybody, okay? But we can still hear you. So, we have all of these different court motions and orders. So if anybody is looking for this information, it's at the State of Idaho Judicial Branch. There is specifically a section of this web service that's called Cases of Interest. And here you're going to find the Vallow case, you're going to find this case, and a few others. Just a little FYI for you. So now we have, look at all these order to seals. Okay, so we have right here, going back to February 28th, 2023, order to seal and redact, Amazon. Order to seal and redact, American Express. I'm just going to read some of these to you because the amount of information that lies within all of these motions that turned into orders to seal and redact is immense. So we have order to seal and redact, Amazon, seal and redact, Amex, seal and redact, Apple times 4, seal and redact, AT&T times 2, seal and redact, Bank of America, seal and redact, Banner Ban, and that's one I haven't looked into. I'm not sure what that is. Seal and redact, Block, seal and redact, Blue Ridge Knives, seal and redact, Charter Communication. See, and I'm still not convinced that he did in fact get that knife from Amazon as opposed to Blue Ridge Knives, because there is also some credible information making that link. Again, if you guys know more about this than I do, just let me know. Seal and redact, Charter Communications, seal and redact, Coeur d'Alene Police Department Forensics Lab, seal and redact, Discover, seal and redact, Dropbox, seal and redact, eBay times 2, seal and redact, Elon Financial Services, seal and redact, Idaho Central Credit Union, seal and redact, Idaho Department of Labor, Seal and redact Numerica Credit Union. There's a ton of financial institutions on here. Seal and redact Potlatch #1 Financial Credit Union. Seal and redact Umpqua Bank. Seal and redact Wells Fargo. Seal and redact Order to Seal Verizon. Seal Washington State University. Seal DoorDash. Seal Extreme Networks. Seal Google. Seal Inland Cellular. Seal K-Bar Knives Inc. Seal Bunch of Match Group LLC. Seal Meta Platforms Inc. Now that is the umbrella under which Insta and Facebook live. Seal and redact Moscow Police Department Forensics Lab. Seal and redact PayPal Venmo. Seal and redact Reddit. Seal and redact Snap ×2. Seal and redact T-Mobile ×2. Umpqua Bank. United Parcel Service. Verizon ×2. Walmart. Yahoo. Yik Yak. Google. I mean, seriously. Google ×2. Google ×3. TikTok. Twitter. I mean, it just goes on and on and on and on. So to answer your question, Riddler, I'm going back to that. Does that order from authorities exist to Amazon? It certainly does, because they have information from them that they have sealed and redacted. So do we know exactly what that means? No, we do not. And because there is a gag order that's so strict and so broad, I don't believe that anybody really knows, which makes it hard for me to believe when Dateline makes declarations about evidence. How do you know? So many more seal and redacts here. It just goes on and on and on. So what do you think, Riddler?
Well, I don't believe too much from Dateline, because I can remember back in it was like the late 80s or the early 90s, they wired up, I believe it was a Chevrolet truck, to explode. And they were trying to say this truck is not safe. And when they found out that I think it was NBC and Dateline together had wired this truck so that it would explode, and they showed it on television, they got sued in the millions by General Motors. So they lost their credibility a long time ago. Now I know it's a whole new crew, whole new management, whole new team nowadays. But for them to say that, just put their reputation on it, and then all of a sudden we see it here, Amazon. I don't know what they were looking for at Amazon, other than, so far the only thing I could see in the case would be the I don't know, maybe order the gloves and the mask from Amazon. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
Because that's where I got mine from. During the COVID, I still got some left over. And guess what color
Oh,
they
Lord,
are?
I'm glad that's
Black.
what you meant.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah. I mean, they're black.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I get everything from Amazon. Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can get everything from Amazon. This is the beauty of Amazon, right?
Exactly. And by the way, those companies like that and Walmart and a few others, they saved us during the pandemic.
Oh, yes. Absolutely, they did. Absolutely, they absolutely did. Now, you know what? I'm just seeing Riddler as I'm looking on this, and I swear I looked on this, checked this out this morning, and I didn't see this at the time, but I don't know, maybe I missed it, or maybe my days are running together. There are, let's see, let's see here. So I've covered everything up to the 14th. As 6:15, there's 4 court documents, motions and or orders, court submissions that I have not covered yet on this channel. So let me just take a little gander real quick here. Okay, so we've got another motion for stay. Okay. So I'm not going to share this with you because there's just going to be too much, okay. Let me just show this to you. Here, let me show this to some of you guys here. Okay. To all you guys. All right. All right. So as of the documents that I have not gone over in this channel, they're dated the 15th. You know, in this website will update randomly. And there have been times when I've gone on it, I found documents and I went back on it half an hour later and the documents weren't there. Sometimes the document sometimes the website itself is not up and running. It's been a little glitchy for me. It's been my experience. But the first of these documents is It's an amended motion to stay. So Mr. Kohberger, we know that he was indicted. Motions requesting release of grand jury materials under qualified protective order. So we know that they want those grand jury materials. Then the state filed their state's response to defendants' motions regarding grand jury record and transcript and proposed order on May 30th, 2023. The parties are not able to reach an agreement, which we know. If further opposition of Mr. Kohberger's motion for the preparation of grand jury records on June 6, 2023, the state filed their state's supplemental response to defendants' motions regarding grand jury records and transcript. Hearing is scheduled for June 27th. Okay, we do know that. Kohberger stood silent because he was not agreeing to the validity of the grand jury indictment. That's what the defense is claiming. So here's the argument. By the time this court hears argument on the preparation of the grand jury proceedings, almost 6 weeks will have passed from the time of the indictment. Preparation of the grand jury record will then take additional time. Mr. Kohberger has a right and intends to contest the indictment. So they're still just asking for everything, all of the evidence that was presented to the grand jury and the procedures that convened the grand jury, including how the grand jurors were selected, which I do think is a legitimate legal question since it is such a small community and the grand jurors must come from that community, right?
They have to come from that district.
Right.
That they're
that
divided
district.
into. I mean, there might be 5 counties involved, but they have to come out of that district. Yeah, there'll be so many different counties that make up a district.
Okay, I'm going to have to look into that question. Does anyone knows the answer? Go ahead and put it in chat. That is a good question because it's not just like Moscow or even Latah County. So that's right.
I know, like where I live, there's 3 counties that make up one district.
Okay, that's good information.
The question I've always had, and I've never got an answer from it. I've served on jury duty before, and who decides that I'm getting a letter sent to my house saying you've been selected for jury duty? Now, I know how the whole process works here in Florida.
Okay.
But who decides that we're going to pick these people here to come in and serve as jury duty? Now,
Isn't it supposed to? Go ahead.
Now, I know in Florida it goes by driver's license. Used to be voting registration. Well, they got away from that and they went to driver's license because they figured many people weren't registering to vote because of it, to stay out of jury duty. So they changed it and they went to the driver's license. But is it a computer that's picking it? Is there somebody feeding that computer information? I've always wondered how that got.
Well, I mean, that is a very interesting question. And I think that process does at times have to be audited because it's supposed to be impartial and arbitrary, right? So it's an interesting question as to exactly how that works, though. I don't know the answer. Hey, Anaphylaxis, how are you doing? Welcome. Nice to see you. That's a good question. Sis Fisher says, I find it hard to believe with a master's in criminology, he would leave a paper trail so obvious as Amazon one with Amazon to purchase the weapon for his alleged unbelievable crime. That's kind of a Barney style mistake. Yeah, very well stated. Yes, it sure is. Let's see. Well, let me go to so the next document that I haven't covered on this channel yet, at least, is, what was it called? Clarification to the state supplemental response to defendant's motion regarding grand jury records and transcripts. So I'm just going to read the latter part of this letter that starts with "to clarify," because we do like clarity, don't we? To clarify, it is the state's position that the record/transcript of the grand jury proceeding include everything that was done on the record and recorded by the clerk and or court reporter, including the jury selection process. Where this, a situation where the grand jury was a standing grand jury that was not impaneled specifically for this case, okay, that's interesting, the state would likely take a different position. Oh, were this a situation where the grand jury was not impaneled specifically for this case, but that's not the situation because they were impaneled specifically for this case. All right, I don't want to get you confused. However, because this grand jury was impaneled specifically for the case at bar, the state believes that the transcript/record should include the jury selection process. In essence, the state's position is that the transcript/record begins when the assigned judge first goes on record and continues for all reported/recorded events through the discharge of the grand jury. The state respectfully submits that this addresses the defendant's interest in the questioning of prospective jurors, as well as the nature and quality of evidence presented, including whether exculpatory evidence was included, as described by the defense in the first full paragraph of their reply. Oh, this is getting like I really need our channel legal consultant to work through this for us because it is getting a little dense, don't you think? Let's see.
Now they cannot get the names, if I understand correctly, of the people who served on the grand jury, correct?
No, they cannot. Nope.
They can only get the proceedings, right?
That's correct. That's right. So they would be able, what they would be able to determine is, the criteria that was used to select the jurors, because really it's not going to mean anything to the defense who the individual is. You want to know the criteria that was used to select them, because that is going to allow you to determine whether the selection process was impartial or not. I think that's what they would certainly be going for.
And that goes back to my question. Who sends me that letter to the house? Were they looking for special type jurors for special type cases? Because in my city, I mean, every night there's a shooting. There's always some major crime. There's a stabbing or a shooting every night. So that's why I'm asking how they pick these jurors. Now I got it. Once you get to the courthouse, how they swear you in, the lawyers start asking questions, and they start striking and circling who they want, striking who they don't want.
Right. I mean, I guess all I can say to that is I know that is not supposed to be part of our judicial system in this country, that it is supposed to be an impartial process, that it does not give unfair or weight to either side. But, if that really plays out, I don't know. I get jury duty notifications. So do you respond to them? It is our civic duty. I've had to shriek jury duty a couple times when I was just working my butt off being a single mom. My letter, although there is nothing more I would like than to fulfill my civic duty, the reason I cannot right now is but I have served since.
Well, I think if you get called for jury duty, you should be still receiving pay from your job.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
How'd you like to be on jury duty for 9 months and you draw no cash? 6
Well,
months.
It taints the jury pool for people, for people to not be getting paid. I mean, people are going to say things that are going to cause them to not be on the jury because they're not getting paid. So I think that, I don't know how exactly we would do this, but I think the right thing to do is when people are on jury, everybody knows that you will continue to get paid exactly what you get paid as if you were showing up to work or whatever it is you do. And this way, the question of income or no income truly is going to be as neutralized, I think, as it possibly can be.
Because how long was the OJ trial? About 9 to 11 months.
Oh, I mean, yeah. And they were sequestered, and that was just
right.
I mean, you almost have to be like a true crime fan to be willing to do that, to get the insights. I mean, I know that there's good people that would just do it to fulfill their civic duty, but I mean, that is a major sacrifice. That's a huge sacrifice. Even being sequestered for 2 weeks is a huge sacrifice. To be away from your job, your responsibilities, your home, your family, your pets, whatever it is, it's a major sacrifice.
I look at it as a patriotic duty because you're protecting and defending the Constitution of the United States or the state which you reside.
Say that again, please. I'm sorry.
I said I look at it as a patriotic duty because same role, you're protecting and defending the state constitution and the U.S. Constitution if you're in federal court.
Yep, that's right. And so MJ Maxey makes a good point here, says not the same amount, Kelly, but you do get paid. Your job also cannot let you go. But I mean, you get paid. I mean, I think, like where I live, it's like $7 a day or something compared to what many people get paid a day. I don't know, it's not going to even get me pay the gas to get there. But I know it's different in different jurisdictions. Now, Doxy says, yes, it is our duty and a respectful thing. Some can't do it. Right. And that's the situation I had been in at times. And when I was able to do it, I did do it. And that's okay too. In Australia, we can take leave and receive our normal wage and get paid very minimal by courts. So that's a good solution. Always better in Australia. Always better in Australia. In fact, one time after a live stream, you guys were saying, I think you were saying the fentanyl is not a problem in Australia. And I was talking to a friend of mine that I work with. We were at lunch or something, and I was telling her about this. I said, let's move, because it's a very big problem where I live. I said, we're moving to Australia. She's like, we've got to weigh things out, Kelly, because in Australia, everything bites or stings and it's poisonous. I was like, you're right. We do. We need to weigh the pros and cons. It was just kind of a joke. Let's see. Whoops. See, Angel D says, I found this whole case and feel like I could be a jury member because I wouldn't make any decisions either way unless I got to see evidence, the trial in a court of law, and make an informed decision. Now, Angel D, I believe you, and I believe that there are people who could do that. And I think I could do that. I would like to believe I could do that. But there are people who couldn't do that. They know they couldn't do that. And there are people who could not do that, and they don't know they couldn't do that. You know what I mean? Like, therein lies a problem as far as jury selection goes, What do you think, Riddler?
Well, that's why at least here in my state, that's why you're going to have 2 lawyers. They're going to go through you with a fine-tooth comb.
Yeah.
This is what my client did. Is he guilty or not guilty? They're going to do it real quick in front of an audience. This is what happens here. Have you ever done this? Do you have anybody that works for the Department of the state? Do you have anybody that works for the defense? They go through the whole thing. Like anybody in your family in law enforcement.
Yeah, that's right. Hi, Brandy Wine, True Crime. How are you doing? Yeah, they do. And, things like, I just always think if I truly felt like I couldn't do jury duty and I got called right now, I could be like, what I do? Like, my side gig is I have a YouTube true crime channel. And they'd be like, later. Don't you think? I mean, there's a lot of X Factor things too, right?
and that's one of the, some people are thinking, well, they might move this to get a fair jury, because they do not want an appeal. And I believe the state and the court is leaning towards that side, that we're going to do everything to prevent an appeal on this case.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think I think that is one reason things are so tight and the motions are just moving fast and furious right now, because hopefully we always want to no, regardless of which side you feel you are leaning towards and far as favoring, and giving them, the moral, ethical grounds of being right or wrong, we always want our judicial process to play out, as fair as can be, to eliminate that possibility of the kind of, extra, very costly appeals process that would lie down the road if a conviction is on shaky grounds whatsoever. So, that is why, and I know that most of you know this, there is so much back and forth in this pre-trial phase, especially in a case like this. They want to make sure that the record is right. They want the record to be preserved. They want it to be solid, without holes, with as much equity as is humanly possible, because that is what is granted under our judicial system. And if, a defense attorney gets a whiff of that not being the case, it's going to be appeals-a-rama for years and years to come, right?
Well, I'm still interested, and I guess I'll have to wait till the day of the trial of what type of DNA they have and where they recovered it from. Did they recover it from Pennsylvania? Maybe in a vacuum cleaner? Did they recover it in Washington? Did they recover it in his car?
Hopefully both places. Hopefully all those places, right?
Right. Or how about his automobile? And was any of his DNA in the house besides touch DNA?
That's right.
The DNA is going to be what determines if his goose gets cooked.
I think so. And I think that also, a critical point is going to be whether they find any connecting evidence in that car. Now, I just put out a video last night talking about the coroner and, some things that she had to say. Without getting into all of that, somebody commented, I don't know if it was one of you guys, I thought it was a great comment. They were talking about possible, DNA evidence on the victims, God rest their souls, or, on their hands, under their fingernails. And somebody said, well, that's 40 fingernails. Well, that's damn true, right? So with 40 fingernails, and knowing from, the information that was kind of leaked out there before this strict and broad gag order was in place, or non-dissemination order was in place. The judge apparently doesn't want to call it a gag order, but we call it conversationally. That's right. There were 40 fingernails from under which there was a possibility to find defensive DNA. So if they didn't find, I don't know. So what if they did not find any DNA under any of the fingernails of the victims or on any of the victims that belonged to the suspect? What would you think about things then, Riddler?
Well, see, that's my other point. They got him for, all right, besides the 4 M's, they've got, what was the other? It's not breaking and entering.
Burglary.
They call burglary. Burglary means you stole something, if I'm not mistaken. It's not just breaking and entering. You burglarize something.
I've looked this up.
Look that up for me.
Yeah. Burglary in Idaho. All right. So every person who enters any house, room, apartment, tenement, store, shop, warehouse, mill, barn, stable, outhouse, or building, tent, vessel, vehicle, trailer, airplane, railroad, car, with an intent to commit any theft or any felony can be charged with burglary. So it's the intent to commit theft or felony.
Yeah, the 4 M's are felony. So there you go.
Yeah.
So what led them
It's
to
entering,
believe?
J-Lord, it's entering a domicile without permission with the intent to commit theft or felony in Idaho. Welcome, by the way, J-Lord.
Yeah, like here, I think it says enter in any dwelling.
Yeah. That's right. So Zyra says, I hope I'm saying that right, and Zyra welcome, says, doesn't matter. They are ready to proceed without blood. They feel they have sufficient evidence to proceed without the alleged blood on the night sheet. they certainly are ready to proceed without that. And they're definitely, I was just going to say there is circumstantial evidence that's going to support the case, but I don't know that. Part of this is, this is where we get caught up. I'm making it up in my own mind. Like, I think that I know things because it seems so sensible to connect these little pieces of what we do know, but what we don't know is a lot, So, yeah. But yeah, good comment. Now, what do you think about this so-called exculpatory evidence that the defense counsel is proposing exists?
Well, see, that's where we don't have it in the PCA. So now a rumor comes out that Bethany saw a naked man and he doesn't match Brian's description. That's what it leads to, this gag order. So what is it that she has that the defense thought was so necessary for them to interview her?
Well, it could be like that. Or I do also think of, them serving Bethany with the order to compel her testimony in the pre-trial hearing. So just making sure we nail it on the head exactly what it is. It could have been also fishing for the possibility of exculpatory evidence, because let us consider, if he is in fact guilty of the crimes with which he is charged and he knows it, there must certainly be, once his narcissism gets out of the way, an air of desperation in any room or cell that man resides, right? So it could be that they had an inclination or a knowing that she was in possession of something that indicated exculpatory evidence, or it just could have been a jump of desperation.
Well, it had to be convincing enough for a judge to sign it. Matter of fact, 2 judges.
Well, I don't think it was that cut and dry, because ultimately, didn't the defense and the prosecution negotiated and came to an agreement on that, right? The motion to compel in the pretrial hearing.
They came to a conclusion that they would meet on neutral grounds.
Right.
But a grand jury comes in after this.
Mm-hmm.
Did that squash it? I think the grand jury, when they brought the grand jury in, that squashed anything from Bethany. But I don't know. What day are they supposed to meet?
Right. Well, it certainly quieted the discussion of anything from Bethany as soon as the grand jury indictment came in, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So that was a smart move by the state. And why did the state want a grand jury and not her testimony right then?
Yeah. I mean, in that way, the whole concept of a grand jury is a little bit weighted, certainly, towards the prosecution, isn't it? I mean, I have a hard time seeing it any other way. I don't know.
It was supposed to be for the defense. Our forefathers wrote in there that it was to protect the defense against an overzealous prosecutor. In other words, they're vindictive. I'm going to get everybody I see this week. That's what it was supposed to protect. But so far, every time I've seen it, it's always worked in the favor of the prosecutor, because the prosecutor's the one that can request it, and he's the only one that's challenging, or she is the only one challenging with that grand jury. The defense says nothing.
Right, because the prosecutor is the only one present during the grand jury impaneled proceedings. There is no defense that is presented. It is only the prosecution's case and evident that in anything that has evidentiary value, correct, that is presented to the grand jury, and there is no defense whatsoever that is put on. So it's supposed to be a preliminary step to a trial, correct, to determine if somebody who's accused of a crime should even go on trial. But I don't know. I don't want to say something that's...
Well, I saw the grand jury in the Gainesville Ripper case, they had the wrong guy,
Mm-hmm.
the first guy that was arrested. The grand jury said there's not enough evidence on this guy.
Right.
You can't charge him with that. So that released him from the horrible crimes that we had down here. Same deal, college campus, kids off campus.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's crazy. So, yeah, Jeannie Ramsey says to me, the secret grand jury can be weighted for the prosecution. An open one, the defendant can testify. But this, thank you, Jeannie, and that is totally correct. This was a secret grand jury panel, right? So, yes, thank you, though. That's a good clarification. MJ Maxey asks, does anyone know how long the grand jury convened? No, I think at this point, now, somebody please tell me if I'm wrong in chat. I believe all that we know at this point about the grand jury is that they convened and they indicted, right? I think everything else is a product at this point of speculation. Now, see, and hi, Unravel, by the way. I just realized that you're my buddy Kelly. Nice to see you. Unravel says, what if Bryan is actually the one that made or put the exculpatory evidence out there? Right. Yeah, and I mean, I think that could be a real possibility. Now, the question that I have, which I guess is kind of a legal procedural question, is if the grand jury convened and Kohberger was indicted and this is going to trial, but the defense is saying, you know, the state is in possession of exculpatory evidence. They want to know all the evidence that was put before the grand jury because they think there might be exculpatory evidence in there. Wouldn't that almost by definition mean that the grand jury should not have rightfully indicted the man? I need What's the Obsession legal advisors here. Oh, wow.
Now a grand jury can ask questions. Am I correct? They can ask. In a regular trial, the jury has to stay quiet.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, they can't talk to each other until they start that final deliberation. I mean, they can say, "Hey, how are you? Would you like a cup of coffee?" But they can't talk about the trial. A jury.
Okay. Right. Exactly. Now, Social Butterfly says, I was on a grand jury for a murder case. Trust me, they have to show you very obvious incriminating evidence for everyone to agree. Okay, so Social Butterfly, let me put this question to you then. If, as Bryan Kohberger's defense is claiming is the case, that the state is in possession of exculpatory evidence, so exculpatory evidence is showing, you know, a lack of guilt relevant to the crimes that the suspect is charged of. Isn't it almost by definition contradictory to then say a grand jury convened and indicted Kohberger based on what you're saying, Social Butterfly? Does that make sense? Jeannie Ramsey says the grand jury would have seen this exculpatory evidence, and if it was good enough, not indict. And yes, they can ask questions of the witness. Okay, thank you, Jeannie. Okay, so now that Jeannie, who always has the answer to everything, has answered that question, now I feel confident in saying, here's my big problem with what the defense is putting out. This has been my problem from go, and it's my problem now. You listening, defense? I don't know how they can say that the state is in possession of exculpatory evidence. And the reason that we want all of the records of how the grand jurors were selected, the grand jury was convened, and the evidence that was presented to the grand jury, we want all of that because we know that there's exculpatory evidence in there. I call BS, defense, because if there was exculpatory evidence in that evidence that was presented to the grand jury would not have indicted. So my personal opinion is that this is a public relations scheme from the defense. What do you think about that?
Well, I'm not sure. I don't know how they got to look over. How many days did they convene? There's supposed to be 1,000 pieces of evidence. 50 terabytes of
51 terabytes,
electronic.
300 million pages.
Okay, so they looked all over that in one day? Sure.
Well, they don't have to look over all of that because it's not the trial itself, right? They're just deciding if he's going to be indicted to stand trial. If you know the answer, Sis Vicious, you better get up here. There's a link. They don't have to look over all of that. They just need to look over the evidence that is going to be presented by the state towards the issue of will he be indicted by the grand jury or not, correct? But still, yeah, but we don't know how long they met. I certainly would hope it was, well, I mean, it depends on what the evidence is because we don't know. See, there I go again, just like I keep like wanting to say things and I'm like, that, you just made that up in your head and everybody is doing this.
Well, ironically, Bethany never received a victim's rights. Everybody else received one. And we looked it up and we try to find out where they were using initials. So we try to look up where BF received a victim's rights and we couldn't find it. That doesn't make sense. And hopefully it's a typing
that
error.
was according to my research. I found that she did not either. So Bryan Paula says they are not saying that the state has exculpatory evidence. They are saying that Bethany does. I do believe in some of the recent court filings, they are asserting that the state does have exculpatory evidence. I'm pretty sure that's the case. Maybe not though, but they definitely are saying that Bethany does, right? You're right about that. Let's bring up our friend DC Primetime, see if she has anything clarifying to say about this. Hey DC, how are you doing?
Hey Kelly, hey Riddler, how are you?
Good. What's going on, girl?
Doing fine and welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So my understanding is that the prosecution has the onus to put up any exculpatory evidence and argue against it in the grand jury proceedings. If Jeannie Ramsey were up here, she could probably correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my understanding from studying the Ramsey case. So I don't know. But
Jeannie Ramsey's welcome to come up. I just put the link in chat again.
Yeah, she's always the voice of reason. So hopefully she can correct me if I'm wrong. But that was my understanding.
Why I keep her around.
My understanding is that they would have to put up the exculpatory evidence and argue against it in the grand jury proceedings. Might be wrong on that. I don't know. But Jeannie, please come up if you have any input on this, on the matter.
Please do. Or also Sis Fish said, Sis Fish, you put a big statement there. You said you have answers. We want to hear them. Jeannie does say, Jeannie does say, what's the obsession? Think they are doing it to get a look at the grand jury when they are not supposed to have it. I agree. Look at how public this info is. So she's agreeing to the fact that, I really believe, I believed from the beginning. I don't want to misspeak when I'm making such a strong statement, but I feel like I've heard enough now from people that know what they're talking about. I really believe that this whole bit from the defense saying that the state or Bethany or anybody has exculpatory evidence is I think it's a big PR scheme. We'll call it public relations, because ultimately the jurors are going to come from the pool of the public. Here we are. And look what we're all talking about now. Right. So, terrific. Here comes my girl, Sis Vicious, and she's got the answers. Bring it, sis.
Lay it on us, sis.
Oh, no. Was that too big a buildup? I mean, she knows nothing. Now you're going to do nothing but impress.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you so much for coming up.
So
You and DC both. Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, DC. Going off of what you said, I think my understanding is similar but different of what does or does not have to be presented in a grand jury hearing, which could vary by state to state or, jurisdiction to jurisdiction, perhaps. But I think in the Ramsey case, to use that as an example, I think the reason that was presented to the grand jury was because it was such a hotly divided case. And I think it was to show how little evidence there was pointing to the possibility of it being someone else, so that, you know, potentially exculpatory evidence could be looked at by the grand jury. But on the other side of the coin was how many items are stacked against the parents. So I think it was more theatrical in that case, in my opinion, because it also had been so long by the time that case went to the grand jury.
I mean, that was a real political case, though.
Yeah.
I mean, if you consider the DA versus the police department in that case, I mean, they were really at odds, and I kind of don't get the sense of that in this case. I don't know.
Well, on the other side, for a grand jury, the problem is, I think that a grand jury is often used to, you know, again, maybe mitigate some of the later appeals, you know, which could come up for impartiality, you know, tunnel vision on a single suspect, you know, political pressure to solve this, whatever. But they can present pretty much whatever they want at the grand jury as far as evidence. Now, the whole entire case doesn't have to be laid out to the grand jury, much like it doesn't in the probable cause affidavit or, you know, the pretrial hearings, you know, which the grand jury ended up taking place of. But it's not really their responsibility to point out. I mean, they're there because they want that indictment. It's not the prosecution's job to present in trial or in the grand jury hearings what evidence points away from their client. That's what the defense does. But the defense team doesn't get an opportunity to counter any argument or statements made by the prosecution in the grand jury hearing. Now, they can use that at trial. I think sort of what we're seeing now in the legal maneuvering that they're doing. But again, the prosecution, they're obligated to turn any evidence that might be exculpatory over to the defense, but it's not their job to prevent that at trial. And if, you know, some evidence got looked over, you know, and wasn't turned over later down the line, if they receive that, there you go, automatic appeal because exculpatory evidence was included. So again, they have to give it over. They can't bury it, but they also don't have to present it.
I mean,
so
how
this
hard
is
would
this
it be to
speaks
bury
perhaps to what Dessa Delancey says. I just want to read this one comment, then it's back to you guys. Dessa says they are saying the prosecution has exculpatory evidence that they never presented to the grand jury. So I think based on,
but they
you know,
don't have to.
But they have
okay.
to. They have
to give it to the defense.
Yeah.
Yes, but they do not have to lay out the evidence pointing against someone else in the grand jury. I mean, you would basically be. They want to point out all the evidence, much like they did in the probable cause, to get the judge to sign off, to get the indictment at a pretrial hearing or a grand jury. They want to show the evidence that favors their position, just like you would see in a normal trial. So, you know,
And
again,
then all
even
the
in a normal
defense
trial,
gets-
you're not seeing the prosecution argue for what evidence excludes the person they're prosecuting. It's counterintuitive and would be completely oxymoronic. So again, they're obligated to turn it over. They can't bury evidence, obviously, but they don't have to. It's not their job to present that any information that's favorable to the accused.
If they don't see a reason to. I mean, again, this isn't as political as the Ramsey case, so they don't have that burden. But all the defense gets in this kind of situation, from my understanding, is the transcript. Like, they're not privy to any like recordings or anything like that from the super secret grand jury proceedings, correct?
Yeah, and again, they can pick and choose whatever evidence they want to present to the grand jury, you know. And again, this pretty, by the size of the crime, bare bones probable cause affidavit, we've all read and know. I mean, there has to be more evidence than that. So again, they don't lay everything out at the grand jury. It's just enough. What the prosecutor feels is enough to nudge a vote to indict.
And the
So
burden is much less than
the burden is
Yeah,
much less.
much
Yes.
less. Yeah,
Much
yeah.
less. Yes, exactly. So again, they can, and again, in the Ramsey case, they can use any piece of evidence in the case that they want in the grand jury. And again, in using it in the Ramsey case, if I were an attorney, I would probably do the same, because it highlights for them, the enormity of what they have on this side versus the, potential that it's someone else. So theatrical, in my opinion, yes, but it makes sense there. Whereas
Right.
here, why would you do that?
And
That's
to
my
the
opinion.
Riddler's point, with regards to Bethany, what did you say again was going to be the exculpatory evidence? Because I hadn't read that in any kind of documentation. So maybe this
No,
is something that's been reported that I
no,
haven't heard.
it's not in any documentations. We don't know, but there are some channels reporting that she saw a different guy than what BK is.
And now this is now
And,
do you
and that's a
understand
rumor. It's a
everybody?
rumor. That's
Right.
a rumor.
Yeah.
That's
With our
not
commitment to
fact.
the truth and facts here, it is a rumor. Yes.
I'm with Kelly on that. I think, depending on what information the defense had already received, which sounds like they're still trying to get some, if there was statements, maybe even missing from her, I'm leaning more on Kelly's side. Like if it was a fishing expedition and a chance to get to interview her, if there wasn't anything from her that they had received, and again, kind of theatrical, like they're not, we're trying to get exculpatory evidence. They know that's going to go all over the news like wildfire, just like it did. So
Yeah.
I think kind of.
And then Jeannie says they may be also trying to influence the jury pool. Absolutely. Look at everyone discussing exculpatory evidence. A jury might go in thinking that there is hidden evidence. And just taking a break from all of this, thank you for the super chat, Xavier. My wife told me to ask you if your pineapple lamp signifies your participation in the swinger lifestyle. I apologize for my wife. Well, thank you for that little break in the discussion. And no, it does not. In fact, I did not know that a pineapple lamp signified participation in a swinger lifestyle, but now I do know it was just a pineapple lamp that was on sale at like TJ Maxx, and I thought it was cool and I purchased it. But it's all good. No apologies necessary. Thank you for the super chat. And hello, Xavier and wife.
Well, one of my questions was, how long did this grand jury convene, and how long do they get to look over evidence before making a decision?
Well, it was kind of like an FU to the defense, right? Because they didn't get a chance to go through the preliminary hearing and present or cross-examine any witnesses. So that's kind of like shady, but it's an option. Like, why did they have to take that option though? And I think the big white elephant in the room here is that it took how many hours for that 911 call to be placed? I know it's not popular, but
no, I mean, that is one of my
big
biggest
problem.
questions, and it will continue to be. And I'm not saying that it has anything to do with anybody doing anything nefarious or illegal or even malicious, but it is a question that exists. And I think when the more I hear experts, just not only legal experts, but first responder experts talking about what on a sensory level that scene would have been like, it just boggles my mind that it was not, that 911 was not called sooner.
I want to back
like
up just a
everybody
second.
knew about it before 911
No,
was
I
called.
don't think that was the case at all. And see, this is a problem with some of the conjecture that's going on and kind of the baseless speculation that's going on among all these YouTube channels is I truly do not think everybody knew beforehand. I think that there was a total of 6 people that knew before 911 was called within half an hour to a minute beforehand. And the only reason that we think otherwise is because, some YouTube channels realized that that was getting them a lot of views to spin that narrative. But, that's just my opinion, but I'm right on that one.
I'll ask this. Let me ask
Go
this
ahead.
question because we got 2 people that know the grand jury. When the
Sure.
grand jury handed the indictment down, did that prevent Bethany from having to communicate with the defense?
No,
I mean, if
I
she's
think they
called
can.
it as a witness, she'll have to testify in open court.
I'm not talking about an open court. There was a there was a judge's order, 2 judges,
Mhm.
that says she has to speak with the defense.
Well, was that a judge's order or was that a negotiation between the persecution and the defense? I think it was the latter because I think that is important. You know what I mean?
Well, it
Like she
came
was
from
in
a
a totally
judge.
different
I mean, if there is a statement somewhere in the evidence by her, they could just be wanting to question her, like, a typical deposition of a
Mhm.
witness to ask their own questions. They have the right to do that. They can hire their own experts, they can re-question
Mhm.
witnesses. Now, if she refused, that could be why it went to court to get a court
Mhm.
order forcing her to do it, because she just, I mean, could have told him, no, I don't want to talk to you, click. And then
Sure.
until someone makes her, she doesn't have to talk to them at
And
all.
Speak,
and
hold,
let's
hold
keep
on,
in mind,
hold
let's
on.
keep in mind that Bethany is the one person who was, close to this situation. And this is according to, like popular media and also even, the 2 guys that I talked to from the University of Idaho, they all say everyone's basically in agreement with this. After this tragedy happened, and I can absolutely see why, and there's no shade on Bethany, in my opinion, for this at all. She completely ghosted the place. No one heard from her. She went home. She probably, I can't even imagine what she was going through, assuming that she is innocent. And I believe that she is, having, just had that happen in your home. And just like, let's just, reference the idea of survivor's guilt, which is a very real thing. This girl was probably going through a lot. So she just like pieced out mofos. I've got to go I can't even imagine what she was going through. I don't even know the words to say.
Well, take
So
the news
I think
channels.
it's very possible that they did try to contact her and she did not want to talk of anyone. I think that's very possible with Bethany.
Mm-hmm. I think so too. And look how, I mean, for someone wanting to stay out of this, I've said it 100 times in chat. I don't blame them. I would do the same thing. The true crime community, not this channel, because we're better than that, but people get on this information bits and they just nod to I would say to death, but that's not completely improper for
Yeah.
this. But it like a dog with a bone, and it just
Yes.
someone's name. It's just look at the Jacks, look at the hoodie guy. That we're not always the most responsible with the smallest piece of information, and these people
Yeah.
get drug from A to Z from the time it starts until something gets released that clears them of the speculation. And so I don't blame people for not wanting to be in the fray in these cases anymore, because it just
Absolutely.
goes so far awry, and that never leaves. Google's forever, so no matter what comes out, those news articles are still going to be there. And for someone 20, 21, that would follow you for the rest of your life. And I would stay as far away from it as absolutely possible if I was that close to
Yeah.
it.
Now,
Yeah, but
I want,
legally she's in a. I'm sorry, Riddler. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
oh, thank you. I want to go back. It was a judge's order for her to meet with the defendant. He sends it to a
Okay.
judge in Nevada. That's why he has to do
Mhm.
it through this witness program. I forgot the name
Right.
of it. That judge in
Mhm.
Nevada tells her she has to go to Idaho. She gets a lawyer. Her
Well, she has to
lawyer,
answer the motion. Okay, go
Well,
ahead.
why?
right?
Yeah.
She has to answer that judge. So that judge, a lawyer goes before that judge, and they agree that we'll meet in Nevada, the 2 parties.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm up to that point. What happened? Is that still holding that those 2 parties are going to meet in Nevada to discuss what Bethany might know or Bethany doesn't know?
I don't think we'll find that out until trial, because once the judge
Yeah.
signed it and compelled her, and now if she didn't meet with them or stood them up and they had to go back to court, otherwise that motion and filing is kind of a done deal. She has to, I'm sure privately
Mhm.
they'll set up a time to meet and talk, and then we'll hear about all of that at trial. But again, but prior to, when they just asked or request, she's not under any obligation to do anything for them. So
And I think it was under a stipulated motion, which means essentially that the 2 parties did
Agreed.
agree. I'm looking for it right now. Yeah.
Yeah. The 2 parties agreed that they would go
Yeah.
to
Okay.
a place in Nevada. I don't know if it was Reno
Okay.
or Vegas, wherever.
But that was with context to the preliminary hearing. If a
Right.
grand
See,
jury was
right.
impaneled, then that I think goes away.
That's my big question.
Right.
I
Yeah.
believe
Right
that's
now,
That's what he's getting at.
That's what I'm trying to get. Did that grand jury squash that motion, and now judges, without us even knowing it, or the press reporting it, says wipe that out?
Yeah, I mean, if she was, subject to testify in front of the grand jury, which is under seal, and we'll never know, it just goes away as far as we're concerned. That's my understanding, sis.
Yeah.
This is getting too deep legally for me. I'm going to be honest. I mean, I have thoughts, but I don't know. Oh, is this there? Let's see.
Oh, I got one more question about a grand jury. Does
Yeah,
that have to be unanimous in Idaho?
No, I don't think so. I think it has to be like.
I believe it does. Let me see. I can look that up easily.
Yeah, I think it's more than 12 jurors on a grand jury.
12 to 16 usually.
Yeah.
For most
And
states.
then,
12
but
is
it
a
doesn't
quorum.
have to be unanimous. No, I think it has to be like 3/4, something like that. I could be wrong. Speaking off the top of my head here. Kelly?
Let's see. I'm looking it up. Oh, grand juries do not need a unanimous decision for all members to indict, but does need a supermajority of 2/3 or 3/4. Very good, DC. Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah.
Oh. Uh-oh. Who's
You might have
speaking? Is
figured
that
it
my
out.
sis? I can't hear you, girl.
Oh, no. Sis, I can't hear you either.
I am going to find these. I got to find these documents about Bethany. I had them on. Let's see. All right. Subpoena for K. All right. Very good. I'm going to find the link. All right. I just want to get some clarification on these because, once we bring it up on this channel, we've got to clarify it. So,
and y'all do a great job here with the truth, facts, research.
Thank
That's why I like
you.
coming here. It's
Thank
awesome.
you. I appreciate that. That's the best compliment you can give this channel. Thank you.
And that's the reason we're all here, to get educated on it, because we'll watch a trial and say, oh, they did this and that. I said, well, that's a different state. That
Yeah.
might be legal over here and illegal here.
Yeah. Nope, that's right. Yeah. There's so many nuances, and and they're all extremely important.
Yeah, and to Sis's point, like it's all based on jurisdiction, and every jurisdiction has their guidelines and their set rules. So, I mean,
Yes.
for us, we're all consumers of true crime on like a grand scale. So it's not just subject to one jurisdiction or another. So I think it
Yeah.
is important to keep that in mind, that like these different rules and guidelines apply for different jurisdictions. It's a great point that you made
Yeah.
earlier, sis.
Well, it's like in school, we learn the U.S. Constitution, or we used to at least, but nobody teaches the state constitution. And that's what the state uses. They use a state constitution when they go to court, not the U.S. Constitution. But most state constitutions look almost like this U.S. Constitution, with just a few things different, like grand juries.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Federal court, you have to use a grand jury. Some states you don't. But in federal court, you have to use a grand jury for capital crime, like murder. But
That's
not
right.
so in federal and state courts. Not all states have that.
Well, my understanding is that federal court hardly prosecutes capital crimes. I could again, I'm speaking off the top of my head. That may be wrong. So correct me if I'm wrong.
They'll do a few of them. Ones that involve and they can do any of them they want to. It's a matter of who gets there first. But how did Timothy McVeigh, who was he tried by? Was it the feds? Wasn't the city?
I think
Wasn't
so.
the state of Oklahoma? Was it? No, it
I
had to
think
be.
Oh
the
no,
feds.
that was a federal crime.
Yeah, that was a federal. So where's he go? He goes to, I think it went to Indiana, wasn't it? The prison in Indiana.
I truly don't know.
It's so weird that you brought that up because, sorry, Maya's barking. But when I got a feel for this case and this perpetrator, to me, it felt more like a Timothy McVeigh than a Ted Bundy. And this was before BK ever came into the picture. Like I just kind of get that feeling from this. Like it's a manifesto kind of thing, like a belief system kind of thing. I don't know. I don't think it's personal. What do you think, Kelly?
Let's see. What do I think? No, I don't. I think that I think that if Bryan Kohberger is the person who committed this, I think that there was, some kind of a statement or a mission that he was on. But I do feel when it came down to it, the selection of the victims was personal, was deeply personal to him in a way that he perhaps didn't even understand himself. In fact, I don't think he understood it himself. I don't think that he has that much self-awareness. But yeah, there's my answer. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, before it even came out that they had a suspect in custody, I kind of felt like it was the idea of something, kind of more so than the people or the individuals themselves that were the targets. It was kind of like the idea of these people living their best lives in the prime of their youth. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's kind of the feeling that I got. What do you think, Riddler?
Well, I thought that I had different feelings on different days as evidence came in, but knowing what we do know, I think he went there for one person, and the other three happened to be witnesses, and he took them out. And
Yeah.
I think if he'd have saw Dylan, he'd have got her too. If he could have gotten that room, he didn't have trouble getting the other rooms, evidently, or
I
getting
agree
them to
with
get
you
out
on
of the
that.
room.
I
And when I
think if
very
he saw her, he
when
would
I
have
very
taken her out
first
too.
heard it, this is what the news said: 4 students were stabbed to death off campus in their homes while sleeping. That's the first thing I
Right.
heard. That's the only thing I heard. First thing came to my mind, we got a Danny Rawling copycat. That's what he did down in Florida. He took out
I
5 of
agree.
them, and
I
he took
agree
out
with you
3
on
in
that.
Louisiana. All right. So I went with that first, and then all of a sudden, I hear about this place where he may have went to the restaurant they worked at, and he could have been infatuated with one of the girls, and at the same time, he's infatuated with serial killers, especially BK. Was infatuated with BTK,
BTK,
and who else?
possibly
And who else he
Ted
might have
Bundy.
liked?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so he's now going to on this mission. He probably heard it from people saying, "You could walk through that house; they'd never even know it at night." So maybe he did, and he was just going up there to get one person, and the other 3 happened to be witnesses or came out and contested him, and he fired back at him with his knife. And I believe that's what I'm thinking. And then he makes his getaway. If it was BK,
Yeah, whoever it was, I think you nailed something on the head there. It was like a mission. Like he had allotted himself a certain amount of time to go in there and do this thing to accomplish something for himself, assuming it was a man. I'm not going to accuse anybody before they're convicted, but in my opinion, I believe this was a mission. Like they were trying to accomplish something against something. Like they were fighting against something, like an idea. Kind of more like the Oklahoma City thing. I don't know.
I think if anything, he was against an idea that was very personal to him, and it was being rejected by females throughout most of his life. Now, I'm not invoking the incel theory or defense here, but I do believe, based upon the psychological profile that we can create of Bryan Kohberger, I think that is what's jammed up his you-know-what. Now, I just want to let you know that I did get some clarification on the Bethany Funk issue, and there was no official order of anything regarding Bethany Funk. They simply there was an agreement, a stipulation between the prosecution and the defense that the defense was going to simply question her. It wasn't going to be like in a formal manner. Oh, let's see. And Jeannie also said something here. I've been looking for Jeannie. Jeannie also says she had to meet with the lawyers, not the defendant. And no, that was for the preliminary hearing. Yes, that's exactly it. So it was a stipulation or an agreement between the two sides that she was just going to sit down with the attorneys and essentially be interviewed with her counsel present by the defense, and Kohberger was not going to be there. It was like a handshake agreement. It was not an official court order or anything like that.
Yeah, there's no way they would let Kohberger be in the same room with her.
No.
No, we knew that, but we knew that the two lawyers
Yeah.
were going to meet against
Well,
each
I
other.
mean, if the motion to compel was not met with a motion to squash, and if all that didn't play out the way that it did, it would have been a matter of her being in the same room with him, and wouldn't that have been freaking creepy?
No, that would never happen.
I don't know.
So Jeannie also says, thank you. These are some thoughts I was trying to get out, Jeannie. Jeannie is like sharing my brain cells. She's the best. Thank you, Jeannie. You're awesome. She says, what's the obsession? It was because when the preliminary hearing happened, you get to depose every witness. She didn't want to be questioned. Now there is no preliminary, right? So the purpose of the preliminary hearings leading up to the trial and the pre-trial procedures is to depose the witness. So you have their deposition. So then when the trial happens, you already have their sworn deposition. So then if they get up on the stand and they say something that's counter to their deposition, because I don't know, they've been coerced, they've been bribed, they just decided to lie or whatever, you can perjure them on the stand, therefore nullifying their testimony. So thank you. My brain is starting to work now. Yes, exactly. You can impeach them. That's what I meant. Because they're essentially perjuring themselves against their deposition. That's what I meant. Thank you, DC. So yes, that's what this is all about. Thank you. What's your email? Oh, thank you, Mary said. I will give you my email if you have the link. I think I got the full Jammy Jam, but I'm not sure. It's just wattsobsession@gmail.com. And thank you very much, Mary. I appreciate that.
So the grand jury squashed all that.
Correct.
No longer a need for the preliminary hearings. And yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean,
So
they can
that's-
still
once again-
depose her if she's called as a witness, but that's going to be for the trial. And her deposition can still be impeached if she's ever called as a witness in the trial.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. They swear you in when you give your deposition. At least here they do.
Huh. So Social Butterfly believes that Dylan Mortensen is involved. Huh. Isn't that interesting? I'd like to hear more about that. I'll put it out there. I don't agree with that, but I'm interested in hearing why people believe that.
I would just like to see in the police report when the investigator walked up to her and says, "Okay, ma'am, tell me what you saw or what you heard." And she says nothing and nothing, then there's nothing there.
I mean, it's just odd how we heard so much about her statements to law enforcement in the affidavit, but we heard nothing from Bethany.
Right. And I think, well, I guess there could be a couple reasons, upon my first reading, without thinking anything further of this, without Bethany being motioned to compel her testimony, I just saw, well, that's Dylan Mortensen has more relevant information. So Mary Sitz comes in giving us this is what I was looking for. Thank you. I was just searching through those documents, Mary, looking for this exact statement here. So verbatim from the defense's motion, they say regarding Bethany Funk, portions of information Funk has is exculpatory to the defendant. Mrs. Funk's information is unique to her experience and cannot be provided by any other witness. Now, this is interesting. Whereas, the prosecution can't really make a statement like that if it's not true, because they're going to be putting forth evidence trying to prove Kohberger's guilt. And if they say things like that and turns out to be bullshit, it deflates the weight and the meaning of their evidence. The defense can say things like that in the pre-trial phase, even if they are bullshit, because, well, that's what the defense does. You throw everything but the kitchen sink in because the death penalty could be on the line,
Yeah, it's the state's burden to prove the guilt of the accused.
Yeah.
And it's the defense's burden just to
they don't have a burden. I mean, they don't have the legal burden other than, they have to defend their client, but it is
they
the
have to zealously
state's
defend their client, and they have to provide reasonable doubt to a jury.
Exactly. Ding, ding, ding. You're so good, DC. And Zyra says, sadly doesn't really change anything. They have some issue. They're having some issues with. I think it's Bethany and the PTSD that might allow her to be on the recorder or like a video, but no, it doesn't change. I'm not sure what you're talking about. It doesn't change there, but I mean, that is possible. And I do think, I mean, you know, assuming she is innocent, which I absolutely think she is, you know, she certainly has PTSD, and that is very real and very legitimate.
And to Mary Sis's point, it's just weird that people are saying that Dylan is involved, but she's the one that's all over that affidavit when Bethany is just absent from it. That just kind of seems weird to me. I mean, obviously they were on different floors of the house, right? So they had different perspectives of the crime while it was being perpetrated. But I don't understand how Dylan is the scapegoat, but not Bethany.
I think I'm just going to give my 2 cents on this. I think the reason that Dylan is a scapegoat is because we, as a true crime community, anyone following this case, made so many assumptions about Dylan before we knew anything about Dylan that were inaccurate. We made the assumption that her bedroom was on the first floor, whereas it was really on the second floor. We did not know that there was even a possibility for her to be, you know, seeing the suspect in such a way, because we were all assuming, we made these stories up in our head based on the very little we know and the whole lot that we don't know, that she was on the first floor sleeping. Well, that wasn't the case. So when we heard what really was the case and what she had to say, it was shocking. And in that, disconnect in our own minds, I think like we have to make up a story as to why that is, because it couldn't just be that we made an assumption that was wrong. And I'm not like criticizing anyone. I'm just saying I think this is how the human mind is. And I think that is why we have so much more focus on Dylan being having some possible guilt in this, over Bethany by and far.
Yeah, when Dylan was an actual witness and heard and saw things. It's just bizarre to me. I don't know. Like, I don't get it. Riddler?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, once again, the state, or it's a police officer in this case, but he represents the state, they're just going to show that judge just enough of what he wants him to see. He's not going to put everything in there. And all he has to do is convince that judge to write a warrant. And that's what
right.
That's what the probable cause affidavit is. It's a warrant, has to be signed by a judge. And that's all he wanted, to get that signed. He swore everything in there is the truth. And the truth is in there, but not everything is in there naturally. And that's what they want to do, just get BK back in jail at their house. Now they know where he's at when they need him.
Yeah, so it's just skimming the top of the evidence to basically prove their point.
My case is, and everybody put themselves in that position. Naturally, I would never do a crime like this, but if a probable cause affidavit similar to this is signed against me, at what point does my attorney get to challenge it, say, these are all wrong, Your Honor? And why hasn't the defense challenged the PCA?
I mean, they'll have their chance to do that in court. I mean, but the PCA, it's the burden is so much lower than to convict somebody of this crime. So they're going to have to bring it. The defense is going to have to bring it. They're going to have to bring everything to the table to prove that this person did not commit these crimes, which is going to be, with the media, the mainstream media, just kind of already deciding for us. I think it's going to be hard to find an impartial jury in this case. What do you think, Kelly?
Oh my God, absolutely. Like next to impossible. Absolutely. Now I just want to make, and I'll go back to that, but I just want, before I go through another couple comments, Mary brings up another really good point. Thank you, Mary. You are coming in like aces this evening. I really appreciate it. I'm going to call you Jeannie Jr. So now this is true too. And I think it's an important point. I know a lot of people had been talking about at some point that there wasn't, that order of protection for Bethany. Now, I heard somebody, honestly, the reason I knew this was I heard a victim's advocate speaking on another channel, and it was like a law, like a big law channel. I honestly cannot remember what it was, but the victim's advocate explained this, and Mary is totally right here. So we were talking about this before, but just to set, the record straight on this, I feel like I'm coming out on this channel saying, just to set the record straight on this and this, like I'm really not trying to be the aficionado on everything, but when we can find actual facts that are grounded in actual, expert input and then verified through research, I think it's important, because I think that, just all of the, baseless bullshit going around about this case it's not good for justice. It's not good for peace for the families. And if it's not good for those two things, it's really not good for me or this channel. So Mary says, if you're talking about the protection as in Bethany Funk isn't listed as a victim, the victim thing is sent to her and she has to fill it out. The victim thing is sent to her and everybody else who could potentially be a victim. They fill it out and return it to the court, which gives her that protection status as far as the court of law is concerned. So thank you very much, Mary, for clarifying that. I was going to say that earlier, but I felt like I was doing a lot of kind of correcting.
What they do in my state is different. Everybody who's a victim, they don't give you victim protection. What they do
say
is
that
they
again?
see that when you don't get victim protection unless it's some kind of high profile mob hit thing.
Oh, right. Yeah, exactly. Like
But
witness protection. Witness protection, you mean.
Right. You get a victim's
Yeah.
rights. The victim
Right.
has a right to know when and the status of the defendant.
And
That's
what do you
what
mean
you're-
by that? Just
All right.
the
For
defendant's
example,
status and like a victim's bill
I'll
of
give you-
rights, a pamphlet.
I'll give you a great example. The gentleman that does my yards, he got stabbed. So he gets a letter sent to the house. Naturally, he brings it over here and shows it to me. And I told him, I says, that's your victim's right. They're letting you know that the gentleman that stabbed you is in jail. They found him, and they're letting you know that the judge has already put a bond on him for like $50,000, something like that. And that his next court appearance, they got that date on there, which that'll change. And they got things like that on there. That's what victims' rights receive. I'm not talking about victims' protection. I'm talking about victims' rights. And I don't know what happened. Maybe it's a mess up in the mail. It could be something different. But here in my state, when you become a victim, you receive a letter and it tells you the status of the person, of the defendant that committed this crime towards you. We have
Yeah,
arrested.
I kind of know a little bit of something about that in your state, Riddler, from what I gleaned in this live. But
Okay.
I have been a victim in the state of your dwelling, and I know exactly what you're talking about as far as the proceedings, as far as the accused and like the dates and everything that's sent to the victims. But
Right.
there's a lot of holes in that. I mean, dates change, things change, and unless you're actually represented by an attorney, you're not going to be in the know unless you're like really up on it and really informed as a victim.
Right. The state attorney is the one that sends it here, their office. And if you have any more questions, feel free to call us. Well, you can go online now and see the status of a defendant. You can see who's in jail, which jail they have them in, when's their next court date, how much their bond is. And they'll even send you a letter saying he's been bonded out, as far as it goes.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to represent, and I'm totally listening to you guys. I very much appreciate the conversation you're having while I'm reading these comments. It gives me a chance to get some of our chat people in on this. So there's representing two different sides. We have, I'm just going to read a couple comments by Social Butterfly and then Rosie. So Social Butterfly, I think, is thinking very much like Tracy Wheeler and says to Tracy, exactly, they did absolutely nothing. She's talking about the two surviving roommates. Nothing to help during, nothing to help after, nothing. Now, what I have to say to that is, I understand how one can feel that way, and I understand the frustration. I'm not trying to be like derogatory or anything, because I really do, because I feel that frustration. But I think what we know is we believe that they did nothing. Again, I have to say there is a whole lot that we don't know, and I just don't want to on the channel crucify people that might be completely innocent. So then, or was it Jay Lord? Okay, so Jay Lord and I think Rosie are saying similar things. I've just picked up Jay Lord's comment. These girls' lives came to a screeching halt. They got to be blown away how life turned upside down and inside out in a blink 7 months ago, and it just gets worse. Yeah. So I know that, there's a very kind of passionate discussion in chat going on about, what's up with the two roommates. But, I guess, my position is, and this is a channel that, any material on these girls is, going to take from this channel is we're going to look critically at everything we know. But right now, we just don't know. And we do have to understand if they are victims, which is how I must see them at this point, because I don't know anything else that says anything different. They're suffering.
Yeah. And it's, to be fair, a 20-year-old now is kind of different than when we were 20, Kelly.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I mean, I look at my child, my oldest child is the same age as your oldest child, and I can't imagine them in 5 years being much different than they are now.
Sure.
It's just their scope of understanding of the world is different than ours may have been at that age. So it's like a generational thing. We, the generation of these young people is different because they're probably not going to have that scope of understanding that we did, post 9/11, post like all of these things. I mean, it's been very different for them, and it's been very kind of, we've done a good job kind of protecting our children, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, I think so.
I just want to say, I don't see anything so far that points guilt towards any of the two roommates. What I do see is a defense attorney is going to try to find a weak link or anything they can to get one juror swung to their side.
Yeah.
And it could be the person doing the evidence technician messed up, but they're going to find that one weak link and they're going to hammer on it.
Yeah, but we have to look at it based on the totality of the evidence, not just one piece of evidence. And hopefully, if this guy did it, then there's going to be an abundance of evidence, not just technical, not just biological, not just circumstantial, but a whole totality of the evidence, including his behavior after the crimes, that can be admitted.
But I've been on some of these crime channels, and I've heard people say, unless they find the knife, he's innocent. Now, what that guy's on the jury, and hopefully that gets vetted before he gets to the jury. I'll never forget my dad saying OJ is going to be found not guilty because they're not going to find the knife.
Well, they found the knife later. I don't know.
OJ? No, they never found his knife.
There was a large generational component to the OJ case too. My grandmother still swears that man, he is innocent.
They have the knife. They have it. I'm sorry.
All right, I don't want to talk about OJ. So Mary also says Michael Jackson sang a song. It says, for this reason, you start to scream, but terror takes the sound before you make it. Possible that happened to all the victims. And I saw your personal account, Mary, and thank you very much. Now I did
Thriller.
I did I did put a video out. I don't know, it was a while back, and it's talking about the different, from my perspective is, having a background in psychology, of the responses that we have to trauma. And there, some people call them the 5 F's. This is how I learned it. The 5 F responses. There's fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and flop. All right. So fight is your, like normal adrenaline response. Flight is your, fight or flight. Freeze is what ostensibly Dylan was describing in the frozen shock phase. Fawn is to, basically play up to the predator, like trying to appease the predator. And flop is essentially to play dead. Now, when we are faced with extreme fear, terror, of a life-threatening source, or what we on a subconscious level perceive to be life-threatening, the parasympathetic nervous system takes over, and we do not get to choose the response that is initiated. This is a survival mechanism. It's very Darwinian, it's adaptive, and it's science. I just wanted to throw that out there. I made a video about it a few months ago if any of you want to check it out.
I love the 5 Fs. And yes, if you're a follower of the behavior panel, I think fawn is friend if you're watching them.
Fawn is friend. That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I called it friend in the video. To fawn is to friend. It's to appease the predator. Yep. Yep. Exactly. Very good. Very good. Bringing in the behavior panel, who I often agree with, but sometimes do not. Oh, wait, you know what? I got Double R backstage. Let me bring up our buddy Double R.
Yay.
Ooh, Double R. How's it going, Double R?
Pretty good. How's it going?
I'm pretty
Hey,
good.
Double
How about
R.
yourself? So what do you think about all this craziness?
Well, I don't know. I tuned in pretty late. I didn't know that was going on. I was grocery shopping.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Gotcha. Sometimes it's Taco Bell. Sometimes it's grocery shopping.
Hey, I did go to Taco Bell too. I'm a fast slob, not really.
Oh, that's good.
Anyway, what do I think about it? I'm just trying to catch up. It's basically the same stuff we were talking about the other night. Continued, maybe a little bit off the regular path. I don't know. I just think people need to be patient.
Agree.
I just hate that all this stuff, all these people are getting dragged into it, and we really don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much we don't know. If we look at the recent cases we've been kind of following, there's a lot we don't know. And it boggles the mind to think that so many people have already made up their minds without having all the facts. And I have a problem with that. I do.
That's right.
Yeah. And then at the same time, Cami too, and welcome Cami too, makes a very good point. And see, like with what I just said, I hold true to certainly all of that, but I can understand this perspective because I also have an emotional reaction when I think about something like this too, to this whole scenario. Cami too says, I can't imagine these girls seeing the victims' bodies just lying there lifeless and doing nothing. It just makes zero sense. Now, Cami and whoever else, I don't think that is exactly what happened. I think I was talking about this the other night when Big Blue and Daniel from Drunk Turkey Show were on. I don't, because of the 5 Fs to extreme trauma and fear response that I just explained, I don't think somebody who is not highly trained, like, I don't know, I want to say like Navy SEAL level, but I don't know, because I don't have that training, could come across the scene that was available in that house and not respond to it. It is not part of human behavior. It is, unless you are, and I'm not now, I work with people with special needs all the time. I'm not saying this to be derogatory whatsoever. Unless there is, you cannot cognitively process what you are seeing. And that's like a very rare in like specific cases. It's not really within human capacity unless you are highly trained and practiced to come across a scene like that and to simply ignore it. That is not what happened. I am sure of that, you know?
Well, we don't know if he closed the door and they were still in their rooms, right?
Right. That's possible. Yeah.
And we don't know if he locked the doors back.
That's possible too.
And she goes up, maybe she knocked on the door and said, well, nobody's answering. But my goodness,
I mean,
when I saw the kitchen, and maybe she didn't go in the kitchen. When I saw the kitchen, I said, good Lord, it was like that's where the place, all the happenings happened.
Well, I think their kitchen was just messy. That's kind of how I took the kitchen. I mean, what are you saying about the kitchen? Be more specific, please.
All right. Somebody on one of the channels showed pictures at nighttime they didn't have curtains on their windows. That gets me. I can never live there.
Yeah. All right.
So they got pictures, and you can see the stains just drilling down, unless that's chemicals from where they're doing, unless that's chemicals from the technical crew coming there looking for prints and DNA.
And that very well could have been. Yeah. Yeah.
But it just looks like the same blood streaks that you see on the outside of the house that you see in the kitchen from that photo they took.
Mm-hmm.
Now, maybe that's what woke them up. Maybe she went earlier into the kitchen, saw that, and went to another panic or shock. And that's when she called the guy to come over, or whoever she called to come over. I don't know who it was, but she called somebody to come over, and I don't know how many came over.
Mm-hmm.
And so from there, once again, we only know what's in the PCA. We can't go beyond that. We can only speculate. But that is a scenario where she may not have known until about 8 or 9 in that morning, who knows? And then she calls someone to come over, and they're the ones that call the 911, or somebody now calls the 911.
Yeah, somebody called 911 from her phone. But if you think about it, like Kelly was explaining from her perspective, like maybe she didn't see it, maybe she just couldn't accept it. Maybe there was like some kind of mental block saying this could not be real.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's no way she saw that scene and did not respond. And just by the way, I've just put a link to the 5F's video in the chat there for those of you that want to check it out. Go ahead.
You see people faint at funerals from looking at a dead body.
Yeah.
You see some
exactly.
people go to the funeral and they still don't believe the person has passed away. It hasn't registered in their mind yet.
Right.
I get that.
And
I get that.
I was in the military and I saw guys, they got queasy and some of them froze for a few. It wasn't long. It was a short freeze, but then they popped back to it. They're okay.
Yeah.
But,
So, I mean, having been in the military, you've probably gone through some of the training that might allow you to see like a horrible scene and continue on with what you have to do. Is correct?
Correct. And my dad was a fire chief, and there were firemen who had nightmares after some of the, especially a plane crash.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Oh gosh.
And they would have to go they would have to go get mental health, psychiatrists, psychologists. One of them dreamed that every time he drove the fire truck, one of those bodies was going to be spitting out of the back of the fire engine as he's driving down the road. He kept having that dream. And yeah, there's different things. Everybody's going to respond different. And there's a thing called vasovagal syncope, which means the nerve system is going to get so shocked that the blood vessels are going to dilate and you faint. That's another F.
That's
People
that's
faint.
right. Yeah.
People
It's a V,
faint.
but
Yeah, it's called
Faint.
vasovagal syncope. Syncope
Yeah.
means faint. That's French. But everybody's going to respond different on these when you go through that. And I'm telling you right now, I don't know what my heart rate would be if I saw somebody in my house right now with a black hoodie or a black mask or a cloned in black and walks by me. What am I going to do? I mean, I know what I would do, but what am I going to do after that? And how's my blood pressure going to be?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And you're somebody who's been trained to respond to difficult situations. Exactly. Yeah.
Oh yes, so they trained us before we even saw all that. They had makeup artists come in, and they would actually, and it looked real. I couldn't believe how they did it. And they would they had the makeup on us like we've been bruised and burned, and they would put bones from animals attached to our bodies, and they blended it in so good it looked like we had a compound fracture where it comes out of the skin. And and what they have to do in the military, you have what's called self-aid and buddy care. Your wingman or your shipmate has to come to you, and he has to perform enough first aid to keep you alive until the medics get there, and they got to keep you alive until they get you to a hospital or to a clinic, a MASH unit. So yeah, there's a lot of difference in there. I guarantee you these two girls never went through that training.
No, absolutely not. Now, I have to bring up something in chat here. It's something I just need to mention. So JAC0606, hello, welcome. Thanks for being here. So JAC says, she calling her freaking friends, not 911. Time proves she waited 3 hours to call 911. Oh my God, you're all making excuses for those kids who might have been saved if they weren't idiots. Now, first of all, I want to be clear. Nobody, the least of anybody, is going to be me who's making excuses for anyone if any of those precious lives could have been saved. So don't be coming around here with that, because that's not how it goes around here. So just get straight on that. Second of all, there is nothing that proves that she waited 3 hours before calling 911. There is nothing that proves any of those roommates called anyone 3 hours before 911 was called. So this is the danger of all of those bullshit YouTube channels out there who are creating these false narratives saying that many students knew hours before the 911 was called. Then people come up with ignorant opinions like this. So I just want to point that out, and nope, there's no room for that in this channel. Thank you very much. Moving on.
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you to the Riddler for explaining what
Yes,
he
thank
went
you,
through
Riddler.
as a professionally trained person to respond to these sort of situations. These young adults did not have this training. Like, I hope you were listening to him, because that is priceless into understanding what actually went down here. Just stop.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Riddler. That was very valuable. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to punctuate it with like me like giving a finger wag afterwards, but seriously,
No,
it
no, no. I
just
like that.
makes
I
me
like that
so irritated.
because we don't know. We don't know when Dylan recognized. That's the hard part of this. We don't know when it contrived in her mind that these people are deceased. We don't know when and I don't, I question why you call 911 first. If I'm having chest pains, don't call my buddy, call an ambulance. So in this case, that's the only thing got me. She should call 911 first, but we haven't heard her side yet.
And to that point, my father's been dead for 15 years, and I just this year got out to visit his grave and didn't imagine him sitting in his chair at his house, because you don't understand how that's going to affect you, especially when it's people you live with and see every single day. Like, stop it. You don't know what these girls, these young people were going through. So until you have that space to understand it, just give them a break, please.
That's true, and I do, and yes, absolutely, amen. Thank you, DC. So and Jeff H, that's exactly my point. Many YouTubers use phrases like "it's been confirmed," "it's reckless." It is reckless, and to what DC just said. Now, I do understand those of you like Social Butterfly who have suspicions about, and I totally get that, and I'm certainly not saying you can't have those suspicions. I feel very uncomfortable with the 8-hour gap as well. And it's not giving excuses to people who didn't try to save the lives of victims. It's trying to, where the perspective I come from is a behavioral perspective. And what would an average person do based on what we know from behavioral psychology? And we know that our behavior over time as a human species repeats itself. We're not all that unpredictable like we think we are. So that's a perspective that I'm looking from. I do understand absolutely why people are questioning things, but like that JAC, who's just not going to be commenting anymore, was, running one of the false narratives of one of the irresponsible YouTube channels who put out the false narrative. All of that has been, debunked, dispelled, unproven, disproven. You can watch. I did about 3 videos on it 2 weeks ago. And I mean, it's like black and white, clear as day. So, how you feel about things and what you feel uncomfortable about, that is totally allowed here or anywhere else. You don't need my permission. I mean, I think that is completely normal, and I think it's a healthy part of the conversation. But to then try to support certain opinions based on crap that certain channels who have their own agendas are putting out there, that's what I am not going to allow on this channel.
No, I mean, it's valid to question it, but if you don't give yourself the time and the space to actually go there and try to empathize with these young individuals, then you don't have the perspective you need to make an informed decision.
That's absolutely right.
You have to allow yourself to kind of walk through their shoes and imagine what you might have seen and what you might have done. And to Riddler's point, I mean, people in his position were trained, and they still have the PTSD. It is unimaginable what these young girls have to deal with for the rest of their lives as surviving victims.
And an example is Aaron H's comment here says, Xana was awake. We know this, unless she had her head under a pillow, which she didn't, of course. I mean, I would imagine she didn't. She saw him approach. She fought. That equals loud. And then the logical question after that is, one of the surviving roommates would have had to heard that. So how the heck was 911 not called for 8 hours? That is that's a fully legitimate question. It does not mean that they're guilty of anything, or I don't know, heck, maybe it doesn't mean they're guilty of anything. If they are guilty of anything, I think it's separate and apart from, that set of facts, but it certainly does cause one to question.
Yeah, it's totally legitimate. It is legitimate, but it's hard to imagine what you would have done if it were you.
Absolutely. Jeff H says there must be an explanation for the 8 hours passing out drunk and getting a hard sleep. Maybe. I mean, it was during 8 hours of when, a college student who was out till late that night and was drinking would be sleeping, right? Noise canceling headphones, or maybe the norm is in a loud house. Yeah, exactly. And Keep It Simple says to Mary, she's getting tired of being afraid to speak. You can speak here. Keep it simple. Come on up and speak if you want, or chat away. Aaron H says, thank you, Kelly. I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but yes, we as the public are entitled to question their actions. Absolutely. And I think it's, I think it's a very a normal, of course, to me, I can't imagine how we wouldn't have that question. Jeannie Ramsey says, besides, to be brutal, if the attack was at 4, even if she found them at 8, they would not be saved. Well, it seems most likely from what we know of their injuries, Jeannie. Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, there's no way. There's no way.
So,
it is a legitimate point. I've had that thought too. And it is the white elephant in the room, right? But you have to allow yourself to kind of empathize with these young people at the time. You have to understand what they may have gone through.
Yeah.
There was no saving these victims. Let's just put that aside. I mean, the brutality, which we don't know, but we can speculate based on what we've heard from the coroner, who you hate, Kelly, I know. But
hate's a strong word. Don't respect her in her position as coroner.
Yes. But the coroner divulged a lot, and it was just brutal. You have got to just give an allowance for that until we hear more. There has to be more before we make a decision as to their guilt or innocence. And what are they guilty of, if anything? Chat.
Right,
That's
exactly.
my
What are
question.
they guilty of? Now, Social Butterfly says, and I'd love to know this because you know how I feel about the coroner. And the coroner said they were all left to bleed out. Can you please cite where that was said by the coroner? Because I would love to have that source. Jeff H says, I'm thankful to the police work left up to us. We would have convicted Jack D. Damn Skippy, we would have, including myself.
I mean, I think the coroner said they were like hacking wounds instead of stab wounds or something like that. That's all I remember specifically about her presentation. But no, I didn't convict Jack or any Jack before.
We on this channel really, and I've apologized several times since we were discussing the possibility, because statistically, as we had talked about, you would look to a boyfriend or an ex-boyfriend before a number of other people.
Yeah, and this was not that. It was not that.
It was not that.
And not all the channel was on the Jack train, by the way, Kelly.
Oh no, I know that. That's true. That's true. Oh, thank you, Elizabeth. I appreciate that. But I actually do have to get going because it's been 2.5 hours here and it's getting a little bit late for me, but I really do appreciate all the conversation in chat. Thank you guys so much for being on panel. DC Primetime, Double R, and Riddler, who hung up here with me for a really long time, and Vicious. We miss you. Always love hearing from all of you guys. Thank you so much. I really very much do appreciate it. And I do respect all of your opinions in chat. But if something is being repeated as fact that we know is not fact and is a product of nonsense that's just been spread around through YouTube, I am going to call it out, because this channel is committed to justice for the families and peace for the victims. And that's the beginning and end of that.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have anything else to say, Double R, DC?
No, I'll tell you, I commend you for your coroner video there, yesterday or the day before?
Yeah, something
Good,
like that. Yeah,
good
last night.
stuff.
Yep, I
Good
put it up
stuff.
last night. Thank you.
I did
Thank you.
not.
I
I did not
appreciate
know
that.
any of that. Honestly, I didn't. I just knew that. What's her name? Was it Kaylee? That
Yeah.
her sister, her younger sister, got a hold of the coroner, and she talked to her directly, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But anyway, no, that was good stuff.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks. Yeah.
You're welcome.
And yes, and Social Butterfly, you'll always be allowed to have your own opinion. Thank you for that, Double R. I appreciate it.
No problem.
So, all right, guys. Well, I am going to be peacing out. I will be doing a live stream in the next couple of days. And, I have a few videos in production. So, definitely be looking for that. And I always want to hear what you guys think. I really do always want to hear what you guys think. I read all of the comments. I can't respond to all of them like I used to on all the videos because there's just too many these days. But I do read them and I really appreciate them. And a lot of your comments cause me and us to think about things that, I wouldn't otherwise. So, thank you very much. I really do appreciate all that.
Where's my book? Where's my book?
Oh my God, I still haven't sent it. I know I'm a terrible person, aren't I? Okay, so tomorrow is a male holiday. Just send me. I'm going to try to remember to send it on Tuesday all by myself. But if you want to send me an email, go ahead and send me an email. And when I see it, I will definitely send it because I feel bad about that.
Blah blah blah. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
I have it right
Thank
here.
you, Chuck, for being here and for commenting and offering your opinions because we do all come here to think and learn. So
yes.
Thanks, TC.
Appreciate that. Thank you,
That's
Double
right.
R. Have a good night, guys.
Yeah, have a good night, everybody. And as always, we've got to remember this is about the victims of this tragedy: Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. And what we want here on this channel is justice for them and peace for their families.